Lord of Mysteries. Fire of Destruction Chapter 1-20. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Darkness was everything he can see. He couldn't feel his body, only an excruciating headache that was crushing his brain and a weird feeling of being wet. But that did not matter at that moment. The only thing that did was for that damned headache to disappear, but the longer he waited the more it hurt. Tears were falling from his eyes and he realized he could finally feel his body. He put his trembling hands on his head. He knew it would do nothing in terms of helping get rid of his pain, but at least it comforts him. After what was hours, but in reality it didn't even take 3 minutes, the pain began to subside, and after another 3 minutes, it disappeared like it was never there, to begin with. Then he inhaled like he never did before. His lungs were also in pain, and his arms, his legs, his back. Why did everything hurt so fucking much? While still trembling he tried to open his eyes, but his vision was a blur and he had to close his eyes again and wait. After a while he opened them again, but the only thing he could see was the ceiling of a cave. Question mark. Question mark, 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 exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Wait, cave. Immediately after realizing that, he tried to get up, and after getting up he fall again. He was too weak. Why was he so weak? Looking at his feet, there was a chain attached to his ankle. His ankle was very swollen and he could guess that it was broken. And he could feel it. He tried to touch it, but as one may guess, that was a bad idea, and a quick burst of pain made him flinch. Biting his lips to no scream, he could only grunt slightly to not make any noise and get undesired attention to himself. While looking around again, he discovered that he was in a small cell. It couldn't be more than 2 x 2 meters. There were thick bars at his left and what looked like a corridor going to God knows where. He also realizes that there were a lot more cells that were a lot bigger, but they were also full of people. Men and women from the age between 10 to 50, wearing only rags and looking as if not worse than their clothes. Their appearance was like being starved for a long time. He could even see the bones of the children that were there. Looking away from that horrible scene, he looks at himself again and he realizes that there was something very, very bad with him. His ankle was no longer swollen and he didn't feel any pain from it. He tried to move it slowly and there were no bursts of pain. It was healed. It healed at such speed. What the hell is wrong with me? After whispering that and trembling, he could only get his knees to his chest and hug them. Lowering his head to let it rest against his knees, his long and dirty hair falls over, covering his eyes. He immediately froze again, and with a trembling hand he raised it to his head and grabbed a couple of it. He took it off and looked at his trembling hand. Red. His fucking hair was red. Immediately dropping it, he grabbed his head and began to tremble again. What the fuck is going on? Where the hell am I? Why my hair is red? And what happened to me? Clank. The sound of a metal door being opened abruptly took him out of his mind, and the first thing that he did was lie down in a fetal position and fake being asleep with his back to the bars. Step, 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 step. With his eyes closed he could only hear the heavy steps of a person in the distance getting closer and closer. Shit, 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 shit. Cursing as loudly as he could in his heart, he kept his position and didn't move a hair. Step, 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 step. Shit, shit, shits, hits, hitchy, shit, 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 fuck, fuck. Cursing even louder in his heart, sweat began to cover him because that unknown and dark person stopped in from of his damn cell. Baitum, 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 baitum. His heart began to beat loudly in his chest, trying to escape this damn situation, and he tried to calm himself. Calm down, maybe he doesn't know I'm awake, just keep faking it, keep faking it. Comforting himself, he began to calm his heart. If he keep it like that, maybe he could. At hash and dollar at dollar asterisk at times and in euro pound. His heart that was beating so fast immediately almost stopped. The voice of that man was dark and crazy. It was like a madman was speaking. He didn't understand the language he was speaking. It wasn't like any other language he had to hear before: Spanish, English, Portuguese, Japanese. But he knew that he was speaking to him. Also at the same time his head began to hurt again, not nearly as bad as the moment he woke up, but it wasn't far from it. He began to tremble because of the pain, and this made the unknown man smile greatly. At n hash and times euro pound euro. The man spoke again and he still didn't understand a single word that came out of that smelly and dirty mouth. His head began to throb and he began to tremble stronger. The pain reached its peak and began to subside, but the man quickly got angry because he was being ignored. With a hard kick that made the bars tremble, it sounded for all the corridor, which made the people in the other cells woke up and they all huddled up in a corner as far as possible from the man who again spoke. "Look at me, slave, or you can say goodbye to your private room." But this time he understood him, so while still sweating and with fear he looked back at the man. The man was very tall, reaching 1.90, with a strong build and a cold air to him. His hair was unkempt and messy black, the same as his eyes. His teeth were a very disgusting yellow, and he was wearing a white long-sleeve shirt that was very dirty and with a part of the chest open, allowing to see an ugly scar that reaches his right pec to his neck, with black pants and shoes that were covered with all kinds of liquids. "Well, look at that." The princess finally decided to wake up. "I was afraid we went a little too far with your welcome ceremony," said it with a smile and a little laugh. "The way you said is obvious you don't regret it one bit," he slanders in his heart while still looking at the dirty man that looks more like a prisoner than a guard. The guard didn't continue to harass him and move away, and he go to the middle of the corridor and scream, "All right, scum, wake up and get up. It's time to leave. If I see anyone still asleep I will chop off their heads." His voice echoed and reached everyone, and they slowly got up while still being as far away from the guard as possible. At that moment a lot more steps came and a considerable amount of others guards came and enter all cells and tied a rope around their necks and arms. He was the last one, and the one in charge to tie him was the dirty guard. The guard opened the cell and kicked him, which made emptied his lungs of air, and while he was coughing and holding his stomach the guard took the chain from the wall and started to drag him like a sack. "What the hell, you dirty smelly old ball sack. Damn, I thought I would shit my organs." While slandering the guard he took advantage of the situation and looked around to get as much information as possible. They were approaching the entrance of the cave and the sky was dark with a bit of crimson light. Great as night time, and what is this crims? His thoughts began to slow down and came to an complete stop when he was out and he could see the origin of the light. It was a beautiful crimson moon. Lord of Mysteries, Mother Tree, Aemon, Klein Moretti, Medici, Adam, Will Ossepton, Fallen Mother. While he was looking at the crimson moon, the man who was dragging him stopped and looked at him. "EY, get up quickly and go with your group so I don't have to deal with you anymore." After he said that, he finally began to look around him and saw that they were in a type of dock. He didn't even realize that they had come here. "How long was I staring at the moon?" With a cold sweat, he immediately stopped thinking about it because he knew with absolute despair that even the fact that he was alive when he regained consciousness in his cell was not short of a miracle. After getting up and reuniting with the rest of the slaves, he tried to remember what had happened. He could remember who he was. His name was Joa Nahuel, 21 years old, studying to become an architect, a lover of video games and web novels. He was the eldest son of a family of 4, his little brother being 19 years old. It was a lovely family blessed with health and very united. But that was it, they weren't special, just a normal family. His favorite novel was by far Lord of Mysteries. He was a simple guy, so why of all the novels he read he had to end in the one that just knowing too much would either directly kill you or there were gonna be a paranoid knocking at his door before he could even react. While thinking and cursing in his heart, he suddenly feel a gaze on him. His entire body began to tremble and he felt that his soul wanted to leave him. Thankfully that gaze was just momentary, just a quick one, but he could feel it. It didn't come from the guards either, that meander of the prisoner path, that gaze from a high place. Before Joa could try to guess who it was, a big ship already came to the dock. It was a typical pirate one, painted black, but the paint was already very faded, like it hardly received care or maintenance. Ads by PubFuture. It has 8 cannons on each side and the sail was a bloody red. If someone had asked him he would give it a 4/10. It could use some more cannons. Anyway, when he stopped criticizing, the ship docked and a man got out and approached the dirty guard. "Well, it looks like you got a good bunch this time." His gaze quickly passed everyone before it stopped on him, and a high one too. With that said, he looked at the dirty guard again. "Good job, Thames. If you keep this pace you'll be able to leave this place." This visibly excited the dirty guard, named Thames, and he soon bowed low in front of the other. "Thank you for your kind words, Captain James. The first will bring a bigger group next time." Having said that, moved and stood next to James, and next Thames ordered in a loud voice, "Everyone board the ship, we don't have all night." While he said that, he grabbed a slave at the front and quickly threw him towards it. With that, everyone started boarding the ship, and Joa took advantage of that and took a quick glance at the captain. He was a man of a strong build with long greasy blonde hair with gray eyes that shine with desire, with a black tuxedo. Before he could take a longer look, his chains were pulled, hurrying him to move faster. They took them to the bottom of the ship where there were cells prepared for them, only this time he was with the group, not alone. When all the slaves were already chained to the walls, the ship left the dock and embarked on an uncertain destination. In the darkness, everyone was already sleeping. The journey to reach the dock wasn't long, but because of malnutrition, they were just too exhausted. Joa was the only one awake, sitting against the wall looking at the others cursing about his luck. Then he leaned his head against the wall and closed his eyes to think about his current situation. With the way Thames acts in his aura, I can guess that he should be a prisoner of the bound pathway, and James should also be one, but I'm not sure of his sequence. What I'm sure is that only the Rose School has the formula for this path, and is obvious they aren't from the Temperance faction. Thanks to the information from the book, I know that the Rose School isn't especially known for trading with slaves, so the most likely scenario is that everyone on this floor are going to be used as a sacrifice to the Mother Tree. I would have preferred that the Aurora Society were the ones to trade with me. At least I would have had a chance to better plan my escape, but now I only have two choices: or I find a way to escape from this ship in the middle of the sea with no land in kilometers, or I wait for us to dock and be a sacrifice to Mother Tree. Ads by PubFuture. Dot 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 dot. Dot 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 dot. Dot 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 dot. Dot 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 dot. Dot 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 dot. Dot dot dot. Dot dot. Great. With resignation, he decided to put the escape plan to wait and to try and discover who was the previous owner of his body. Taking the classic meditation position, he tried to empty his mind to allow the memories of the previous owner to enter. After a couple of minutes, he finally emptied his mind and began to search for the owner's memories. Suddenly another burst of pain hit him again, and the memories of this body began to flow. Joa was prepared this time for the pain, so it didn't take it by surprise, and as he gritted his teeth he began to remember. The owner of this body was named Adrian Kenway, a citizen of the Fasak Empire who had come to Byam to try to become a powerful pirate. It wasn't even a week before he provoked the wrong people and was kidnapped. He was an orphan and never knew his parents. The only thing he still had of them was a necklace that looked like the tip of a crimson spear. The lady that took care of him in the orphanage told him that it was the last thing his mother left him. And even that was taken from him by Thames, when he gave him the beating of his life and then dragged him away to the cave where he woke up. Joa could guess that Thames took the beating too far, and when he left him lying in the cell, Adrian ended up dying from his injuries and he ended up occupying his body. What a poor and unlucky bastard, was all Joa could say before leaving the meditation state. Now lying on the dirty and wet floor, he looked up at the ceiling and tried to sleep. He could feel the tiredness of the day, and it also seemed like he was getting his memories back. It took more than he could guess. Before he knew it, he had already fallen asleep, and the world of dreams opened its arms to tuck him in. In this dream world, Joa was able to see a large room equipped with a large bed against one of the corners, a blue wardrobe on one side and a 43 inches LG TV on the wall. This was his room. He remembered that, but Joa didn't understand why was he dreaming of his room while being in the situation he is. The TV was on and he could see what was on. It was in a football news broadcast. Hello, good morning people. After 5 days of the shocking match between Argentina and France, and the celebrations are still just as strong. How could Raul not be after 36 years? Argentina is finally the winner of the World Cup, dethroning France in a penalty shootout 4-2. As the commentator continued to speak, the door to the room opened and someone entered. He was a tall man of 1.83 meters with a strong build and a little overweight. He had curly black hair and brown eyes. He wore square glasses with a short but well-groomed black beard, but if you look closely you would be able to see some red hair in that same beard. This guy was the same Joa before he switched bodies with Adrian. Joa watched as his body closed the door and proceeded to turn off the television. Then he himself sat on the bed and took his cell phone out of his pocket and began to read. With a bit of cold sweat, Joa decided to get closer to his body to see what he was doing. When he looked over his shoulder, Joa saw that he was on her trusty, classic web novels page. He also saw the title of what he was reading and a tremor ran through his body. Lord of Mysteries Chapter 1, Crimson. Suddenly his body looked at him and his eyes were no longer brown but entirely black with no white in them. Joa immediately froze and reacted on instinct by launching a powerful right jab at his other self's face, but before his fist made contact a crimson light shimmered, engulfing everything in his sight. Joa immediately sat upright, hyperventilating and covered in sweat from the recent experience, leaving him in brief shock. Ads by PubFuture. Before he could process what had just happened, a door opened, waking the others. This caused the group of people to immediately retreat to the back while keeping as much distance from the stairs as possible. This allowed to highlight a skinny blonde woman who was hugging a little girl quite similar to her. Next to them was also an old man with a lost look that ignored everything around him. Joa was relatively close to them, so for him they stood out more. Strong footsteps came down the stairs and the figure of Captain James appeared, only this time he wasn't wearing his black tuxedo, he was only wearing slightly worn pants with a sailor shirt open on the chest. When he got to the front of everyone he had a crazed look barely contained. "Good morning," his voice full of malice resounded everywhere. "This will be the first and last time I talk to you, so feel grateful. Our destination is only 5 days away, so I hope you enjoy your last days of life." When he said, some of the people there started crying, but don't despair because you will have the highest honors any vermin could wish for. When he said that he didn't hold back anymore and fur began to grow all over his body. Your ball of excrement will be sacrificed to the true mother tree deity, so rejoice. While he was saying this his transformation only speed up. The people there still couldn't process what James had said because of the shock when he was being covered in fur at an alarming speed. Not only that, but he stretched to an intimidating 2.10 meters and gained animalistic characteristics. Its arms were deformed to shape legs with sharp claws, the same thing happened with its legs. And his head turned into the likes of a wolf. This was the werewolf of sequence 7. The moment his transformation ended, he pounced on the old man from before. No one did anything out of shock, though that wouldn't have changed anything even if a large part of them joined. What could they do against a werewolf? The only thing they would achieve would be to give him more bodies to play with, destroy and devour. His left claw pinned the old man's head to the head that sank his claws into it and slammed it against the wall, while his right claw pierced his stomach and pulled it out quickly, causing his intestines to spill out. The weird thing was that the old man still did not scream. This finally got people to react and they started screaming and moving further away from the carnage. Ads by PubFuture. When the werewolf pulled its claw out of the old man's stomach, a considerable amount of blood splashed on Adrian's face, momentarily blinding him, and he quickly wiped his eyes so as not to be completely defenseless. Looking at the blonde woman who was closest to the old man, he saw how she had the girl in her arms, covering her so that she did not have to see what was happening while trying to get away from the monster. James then sank his fangs into the old man's neck and thrashed like a hunting dog that had caught a fox. When he did all this, it was obvious that the man's neck would not hold and his head was detached from his body, but as James held it, it did not move away much. James looked at the head and since it did not look appetizing, he simply throws it over his shoulder as if it was garbage, and this time he grabbed the guts and brought them to his mouth and began to eat. The old man's head rolled to the feet of the blonde woman and she covered the girl she was holding even more. Then she kicked it away from her like a ball and it rolled to Joa. The old man's head had the same lost expression as before. Hey, did this old man feel nothing when he pierced his stomach, or he was already dead before James decapitated him? Joa thought apprehensively while his face was still covered in blood, and the werewolf continued devouring the body of the old man, who now it couldn't even be said that it belonged to a human being. Now all that was left was a mass of flesh made up of what was left of the organs in a part of the forearm. Only then did James finish his lunch and return to his human appearance. Only his shirt is torn and he was covered from head to toe in blood. Arranging his hair, he gazed nonchalantly at the mass of meat at his feet, then glanced at the head at Joa's feet. Grinning from ear to ear, showing that there was meat between his yellowed teeth, he approached Joa, stepping on the same mass of meat. Grasping his head again with his left hand, he knelt in front of it. "Or excuse me, it seems that I splashed you while I was eating," as James said that he reached out his hand and touched Joa's blood-covered cheek. Joa tried to get away, but James didn't allow it and held him close and brought his face close to his cheek, giving him a long lick, cleaning the blood. Just there he released it. "There, I clean it, much better." When James said that, he burst out laughing and finally walked away from Joa with the old man's head in hand and went up the stairs. No one moved until the sound of the door closing was heard. "This is a nightmare," said Joa while trembling. Biting his lip to steady himself, Joa's heart sank because now his escape was a lot harder. Sitting up quickly and entering a meditative state to calm himself, he also began to search his memory for the abilities of the werewolf. Remembering the abilities of the werewolf, one can realize everything he would have to do and take into consideration to escape. Black small square, a werewolf has quite powerful regenerative abilities, as well as terrifying strength, agility, and speed. Its claws and teeth are not inferior to the Beyander's weapons of the same sequence and contain poison. They also know some spells related to darkness. Black small square the targets that are under the control of the werewolf would become subordinates after a while when a werewolf's venom infiltrates their body for a period of time. They would turn into a monster like a werewolf, and usually these monsters possess a very short lifespan. Black small square curse. Every time the crimson moon fills, they will lose some of their sanity, grow black fur, and their thirst for blood and the desire to taste blood will reach their peak. A werewolf who is always unable to suppress his instinct to kill and his thirst for blood during the full moon will become increasingly cold and twisted. So fighting him is completely out of the table. Taking all of that into account, the best chance he has of escaping is in the middle of the night, when his sanity is at its lowest, allowing him some margin for error, however small it is. Taking into account that he is on a pirate ship and because of the cannons that it has, somewhere on it they must have ammunition and gunpowder. The ship itself is not that big and should be close to the cannons. The guards themselves, although they had a dirty and cold aura, it wasn't even close to Thames's aura. So he and James should be the only beyonders on the ship. So if you're extremely careful and manage to escape, you'll only have to deal with a few armed guards. Of course, all that if he manages to free himself from the chains and manages to reach the cannon room, but after that what? If he pulls off the plan, he would be sinking the ship and killing all the people on the bottom. Would he be able to live with himself after killing all these people? Ads by PubFuture. And even if all those lives didn't matter to him, he would end up in the middle of the ocean with a very angry werewolf. The trip had just started and it couldn't have been more than 1 day since they left Byam, even so he couldn't swim that distance. The only option is one of the islands on the way to the destination. Byam is located very close to the center of the Sonia Sea and is full of islands, so it is not a suicidal idea. It had only been 2 days since they caught him, so Joa is confident that he has enough strength to swim to one of these, but the same problem comes up. What will become of these people? Looking around, he analyzed everyone who was with him one by one. The vast majority looked quite healthy, only a few looked very thin and somewhat sick. That is a good sign. A large part had the hope of being saved, but the other. He finally made up his mind, and with the restricted mobility the chain gave him, he moved towards the pile of meat. Kneeling in front of it, he sinks his hands into it while saying sorry to the old man in his heart. He almost threw up. Yes, although before he was somewhat close and the smell was already vomiting, being so close now and touching him made him have to swallow his vomit. Everyone there looked at him in disgust, and even those who had something in their bellies vomited it upon seeing the disgusting scene. But Joa didn't care as he pushed a bit of small intestine out of his way as he tried to find a good bone. Yes, that's why Joa decided to do something so disgusting. He was looking for a bloody bone because to escape, the first thing he had to do was find a way to break the chains, and he didn't have the strength for that, so he wanted to try to find a bone, to help him in that, and apart from that it could serve as a weapon against the normal guards. After a while, Joa pulled out of the mass of what appeared to be a broken femur. Now he finally had something to defend himself with. People were still looking at him with disgust and now with some fear because he was armed, but he ignored them and went back to his wall first. Ads by PubFuture. The priority now was to remove the chain from his ankle, so he tucked the bone between the chains, recognized it, and began to pull. There was a horrible screeching of metal as it bent and the chain snapped. He was still chained, but now that Joa was free, the rest of the people were looking at him and didn't know what to say. Until another man got up and spoke to him. Sir, what do you think you are doing? Didn't you see how that monster devoured that poor man? Do you want to die like this? Said the same man, pointing to the pile of meat next to Joa. Joa looked at the man, paying attention to his appearance. He was a 30-something man with greasy black hair that was receding and green eyes. He had a light, unkempt beard and he was very dirty like everyone else. No, but I also don't want to stay here praying that that unfortunate guy doesn't get hungry and decides that eating one wasn't enough. Besides, I don't intend to be sacrificed to an evil god, so I'm leaving. When he said that, he looked at the others who were listening to the conversation. Of course, it's not that they had whispered so everyone heard it. Listen everyone, when I try to escape I am going to blow this ship to pieces and you are going to drown, so I give you 2 choices. First, I release you and we unite to reach the cannons and blow up the ammunition room, sending everything to hell. Or the second choice, you stay here to die drowning like rats, since I'm not going to help someone who won't save themselves. When Joa said that, everyone hurled insults at him. Are you crazy? You're not just going to kill yourself, you're going to kill us all. Are you an idiot? Are you threatening us? Who the fuck do you think you are to say that? Do you seriously think you'll be able to get to the room? They're going to kill you. Looking at the crowd, he finally answered, I'm someone who refuses to die without a fight, so if you haven't decided yet, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to save your asses. Turning his back on them, he began to climb the stairs, but before reaching the 5th step, a woman spoke. Wait sir, please, I will help you, so please release me and my little sister. Turning around to see who spoke was the blonde woman with the girl in her arms. When Joa looked into the brown eyes of the woman, he could see a fighting flame. This made him smile a little. At least someone has balls. He took advantage to further provoke the crowd. Going to the woman, he did the same as with his chain with hers and her sister's chain. Welcome aboard, Miss Alice. My name is Alice and my sister's name is Sarah, she said with a dry voice as she got up and stood next to Joa while holding Sarah's hand. What is your name, sir? Asked the little girl with also a dry voice. It seems to have been a while since the two had something to drink. Before answering Sarah, Joa turned to the pile of meat and tried to find another bone. As he searched, he tried to think of an answer for the girl. He was no longer Joa Nahuel, this was no longer his home, the only thing he has left was the name of Adrian Kenway and the broken femur on his left hand. The girl didn't seem to mind the fact that he ignored her and simply put her face against her older sister's thigh to not see what the man was doing. When he found a broken humerus, he already had an answer. Standing up and handing the bone to Alice so she could defend herself. Looking at little Sarah, the man spoke. My name is Adrian. I would say it's a pleasure to meet you, but the situation isn't the best, he said with a little smirk. Sarah just nodded her head and now Adrian looked at Alice. Tell me, do you know how to swim? Because taking a boat is not an option, he said with a serious expression, the smirk gone a long time ago. Alice swallowed to try to wet her dry throat. We both know how to swim, but I get tired quickly. While saying that, she looks at the group behind her and then looks at Adrian. Is there really nothing else you can do? Ads by PubFuture. If all they want is a rescue, I'm sorry, but no, that will never come, and if we don't get out now, there will be no hope for us, he said while shaking his head. Adrian looked at the group and spoke again. Listen all of you, once we walk out that door, you will be on your own, there will be no rescue. There will be no miracle to get you out of here. He looked around and no one else who was there dared to look at him in the eyes. Adrian shook his head and looked at the group, who fell silent. Then pray to your gods, because no one is going to save you. When he said that, he turned around and walked up the stairs without looking back. Alice quickly followed. Taking a quick look behind her, she saw that the others had their heads lowered and tears could be seen falling from them. Seeing Adrian's back again, Alice quickly hugged Sarah tighter and headed up the stairs, leaving behind the other people who began to pray to their respective gods. When she reached the top of the stairs, Alice saw Adrian with his ear to the door. Realizing what he was doing, neither Alice nor Sarah made a sound. After a while, Adrian made an "shish" signal and slowly opened the door, allowing him to see what was on the other side. It was a long corridor with candle lamps on the sides. Opening just enough to get through, Adrian went first and then Alice and Sarah. There I closed the door and sealed the fate of all the people down there. Taking a deep breath, Adrian began to lead the way to the stairs to the next floor. The ship is divided into 5 floors, with the objective being the 3rd floor. Keeping close to the walls and trying to make as little noise as possible, the 3 of them began to move between the corridors. They managed to reach the stairway to the 4th floor and were taken with their first problem. A guard was sitting on a chair at the top of the 4th floor, luckily he seemed asleep. Signaling Alice to get ready, Adrian started up the stairs silently with the broken bone in his right hand. As he went up, Adrian took the opportunity and took a better look at the guard. He was a fat man with a rather strong smell of fish without a shirt and a sailor hat and pants. Ads by PubFuture. Looking at the guard's waist, his pupils shrank and he began to move even slower. He had a revolver in a holster under his left arm. When Adrian made it to him, he raised the broken bone ready to stab the man, but his right hand was trembling. He had never killed anyone, and he had gotten into some serious fights, but he had never killed anyone. Realizing he had no time to hesitate, he closed his heart and prepared to stab the sleeping man. He raised his right arm and quickly plunged the bone into the man's chest, causing him to jerk awake, but before he could scream, Adrian covered his mouth with his left hand and kept stabbing rapidly into the man's chest as he writhed like crazy. After the 3rd stab, the man slowly stopped fighting, and by the 8th, he was no longer moving. The guard had a pained expression and his mouth hung slack and dripped with blood. The guard's empty eyes made Adrian tremble, so he closed them with his left hand and quickly removed the man's gun holster. Turning to face Alice, Adrian asked her if she knew how to use a revolver, to which she denied, so Adrian would have to be the one to carry it. Putting the holster along with the gun under his left armpit, Adrian quickly searched the body, finding 12 bullets and a knife. Analyzing the surroundings, he saw the man's jacket hanging on a nail. Quickly checking it, he found 2 soli and 11p. Giving the knife to Alice and the jacket to Sarah. Quickly Adrian moved the body of the guard and put it behind the stairs in a dark corner. They couldn't do anything with the blood, so all they could do was keep moving. Moving carefully through the corridors of the 4th floor, when they were near the stairs to the 3rd floor, they had to stop immediately, because just like the entrance to the 4th floor where there was a guard, the entrance to the 3rd floor was also guarded by a guard. The only problem was that he was awake, and it was someone Adrian knew. It was Thames. It was very lucky that he hadn't seen them yet, so they were able to get away in time. Adrian began trying and quickly think of a plan to get past him, but the problem was that he didn't have the confidence to trick him into giving them enough time to go upstairs and light the gunpowder. So the only way to get through was to kill Thames, and Adrian had a few ideas for that. Looking at Alice and Sarah, Adrian smiled and spoke. "Let's make a trap." When everything was ready, Adrian walked down the hall as if it were his house, and this is what Thames saw. A bit stunned, Thames looked at him before reacting and smiling. "Well, it seems that you didn't have enough last time. Maybe you just escaped so that I can beat you up again," Thames said with a big yellowish smile, seeing Adrian, who had a poker face while he saw him. Thames continued the same as when they left the island. The only difference would be that this time he was wearing a clean shirt. Adrian calmed his pounding heart and brought out a huge smile. This took Thames by surprise, and before he could comment, Adrian beat him. "But if it's my favorite stinky crooked tooth man, tell me, Thames, how have you been? I hope you haven't been too busy sucking the captain's balls in the time we haven't seen each other." This caused Thames's face to freeze in shock, and he looked at Adrian, who was far from finished. "Although I think you may have sucked too much. From here I can see the hairs between your teeth. It seems that the captain has a bush down there with all the hair you have in your mouth." The more Adrian talked, the faster the smile faded from Thames's face, and veins began to stand out on his neck and forehead, looked like it was going to explode from how much they were swelling. "Uff man, with that face, it seems that apart from being hairy it was very dirty. Look at you, you're all red. It seems that you sucked something that you shouldn't have and it hurt you. Maybe you should see a doctor in case you caught something. I'm going to kill you, trash slave." As soon as Adrian finished saying that, all Thames could see was red, and he lunged at Adrian. Seeing this, Adrian smiled and quickly began to run towards where he came from, while Thames chased him like a wild dog, and he took advantage of this. Taking advantage of this, Adrian continued to fan the fire that was in Thames. "Come on mate, don't you know how to take a joke like when you take the captain's dirty hairy balls?" Although at that point he seemed to be adding fuel to the fire. The two quickly came to another intersection, and turning quickly to the right, Adrian dashed out of Thames's enraged sight, which further provoked him, and he sped up to catch up with the redhead. When he turned around, the only thing he saw was that Adrian had disappeared and a shadow falling over him. Thames, taking advantage of his advanced senses, managed to dodge it by throwing himself forward. Quickly turning around, he took out a black revolver from behind his belt and aimed at Adrian, who missed his ambush. "You missed, son of a bitch," but what ambushed him was nothing more than a simple jacket. Ads by PubFuture. Before he could process what kind of trick this was, a heavy footstep from behind him made him flip quickly, but all he managed to do was take a knife deep into his forehead. The last thing he saw was Adrian looking at him with a smirk. "We're even now, crooked teeth." As he said this, Adrian ripped off the knife and stabbed it again in Thames's forehead to make sure he was dead. ... You never know. ... If Adrian hadn't meditated to retrieve his body's memories, he never would have dared to do what he just did, because there was no guarantee that Thames would fall for the taunt. But thanks to the memories, he remembers exactly what the previous Adrian had done to provoke Thames, and that also showed him that he was a short fuse, a small insult about his teeth, another about his sexuality, and one last to top it off. And everything this guy would see would be red, and he would ignore everything else. Alice was on the ceiling pulling a very impressive show of balance. Quickly he helped Alice down from the roof, and he began to loot Thames' body. The plan was extremely simple. Alice was hanging from the ceiling with Sarah's jacket while Adrian went to lure Thames, and when Adrian came running into the hallway and hid on the ceiling, she threw the jacket over Thames, making him ignore Adrian falling behind him and stabbing him with the knife. Adrian quickly checked Thames's body and found 5 more bullets including his revolver, also another 4 solely. With a bit of discomfort before Alice's uncomfortable look, Adrian began to remove Thames's shirt when he finally managed to see something that he was looking for hanging from Thames's neck. It was his necklace. He quickly took it off and examined it. It was still the tip of a crimson spear and didn't look battered. With a sigh of relief, he put it on and it released an unknown burden from his heart. "You're welcome, Adrian," he thought in his heart, and looking at Alice, who was looking at him already anxious to go for her sister. "Let's go get Sarah and tear this ship apart," was all he said before going to where they hid Sarah. Ads by PubFuture. As soon as they got close to the place where they hid Sarah, she came out on her own and ran towards Alice, hugging her. "Sorry for the delay, sweetie, we are about to get out of this nightmare," Alice comforted Sarah while she caressed her back with soft movements. After a few moments, they separated, but they had their hands joined and returned to the corridor where the shirtless body of Thames was, only this time there was a kind of grey stone similar to a chain on his chest. Suddenly he felt a small pang in his head, realizing that Adrian quickly moved in front of Alice and Sarah. "Don't touch the chain and don't look directly at it." "But why, Mr. Adrian?" asked little Sarah. "Because we can't afford to take it and it will bring a lot more trouble than good if we pick it up," Adrian replied calmly as they walked past the body. Finally, they reached the stairs to the 3rd floor. When they made it up the stairs, they saw that they were directly into the cannons. Looking around, Adrian managed to see a decent amount of barrels and ammunition near the cannons. "Bingo," was what Adrian thought. Quickly approaching the barrel, he lifted the lid of it and saw that it was full of gunpowder. Looking around, he saw 12 identical barrels around. Looking at Alice and Sarah, Adrian nodded at them and replaced the lid on the barrel, but not before poking a sizable hole in the lid with the bone. He then knocked over the barrel and began to scatter the gunpowder like it was seeded, making a path towards the stairway to the 4th floor. As he did so, Alice and Sarah gathered the other barrels together before they finished. Looking towards them, Adrian was going to ask them if they were ready to light the gunpowder. A strong footstep was heard at the end of the corridor towards the stairs of the 3rd floor. Quickly aiming the black revolver into the darkness, Adrian quickly called Alice and Sarah to his side. They had been discovered. The heavy footsteps continued, but there was also the sound of something being dragged. When the person appeared, Adrian, Alice and Sarah began to tremble. It was James, covered in blood, and he was dragging the body of one of his own men. "Oh, I thought I smelled something familiar. It turns out it was you," James said tentatively as he slowly smiled, showing his sharp teeth. At the same time, thunder sounded in the distance. A storm was coming. Silence filled the room. The only thing that could be heard was James's strong and hoarse breathing along with the loud sound of the waves hitting the boat. The storm had already arrived. It was obvious that James's condition was not good. He seemed to be close to losing control. "You should have stayed down with the others so I wouldn't have to wait between deaths," James said with a hoarse and crazy voice. He didn't seem to notice his condition. His face was misshapen in a disgusting combination of man and wolf, while his right arm was misshapen in the shape of a wolf's leg. His eyes were black with red irises. Quickly coming to a decision, Adrian tried to whisper to Alice and Sarah. Before Adrian could say anything, he was interrupted by James as he threw the body he was dragging towards them. Pushing Alice and Sarah to the side, Adrian quickly jumped to the other side to narrowly avoid him. Adrian then yelled, "Run to the 3rd floor." While Adrian shouted that, he firmly grabbed the revolver. This was the first time he'd ever fired a gun, so the last thing he needed was for the gun to fall from his hands from the recoil. Aiming at James and firing, Adrian missed considerably. The bullet hit the wall to the side of James, but before Adrian fired the second shot, James would not stay still. James quickly charged at Adrian like a mad dog. Barely having time to dodge, he moved quickly to the right again, getting James past with his back to him. Adrian wouldn't waste the opportunity, firing another shot this time as James was no more than 5 meters from Adrian. The bullet hit him in the lower back. Although this did little more than anger him even more, causing him to lose even more control. This time his left leg was affected, transforming into a deformed leg, causing James to now have to move like a real dog. Ads by PubFuture. Alice saw that James was too focused on Adrian to give any importance to her. She quickly scooped Sarah up in her arms and ran toward the stairs to the 3rd floor. How clever, was what Adrian thought as he watched Alice manage to escape. James couldn't care less, the only thing on his mind was the wretch who dared to shoot him. Seeing the way James was looking at him, Adrian could only think of one thing. I should have taken shooting classes. James quickly launched himself at him again and Adrian dodged to the side again, only this time James was faster, managing to scratch his chest. Holding the wound, Adrian only allowed himself a quick look. Luckily it wasn't deep, but it would certainly leave a scar. Putting those thoughts aside, Adrian fired 2 quick shots at James but missed as James jerked from side to side. He charged back towards and Adrian was too slow this time, receiving a strong blow that launched him across the room to the wall, hitting it hard. This knocked the air out of him and dazed him, and James let out a loud yell and charged at him again with his right arm. Adrian barely managed to get out of the way, watching as James's claw went through the wall where he was. James tried to get his arm out but was stuck. Seeing this, Adrian took advantage and quickly stood behind James. He aimed at his head and fired the last 2 shots from his black revolver. These shots hit James in the back of the head, but that was far from enough to kill him. After all, he was a Sequence 7 werewolf that was about to lose control. And these shots to the back of the head were all it took for him to lose it. James gave a loud yell and quickly kicked back with his right leg, hitting Adrian in the stomach, throwing him to the opposite side of the room, hitting the wall again, only this time with much more force. This caused Adrian to vomit forcefully, and all he could see were stars and he couldn't hear anything, just a buzz. Due to the strong blow, Adrian dropped the revolver, although it didn't matter too much since it was empty. After throwing up, Adrian tried to get up again, but this failed miserably. His legs were noodles and his vision was cloudy. Ads by PubFuture. Knowing that if he passed out he wouldn't wake up again, so leaning against the wall he slowly got up and he turned to look at James. He was writhing like a snake being roasted alive while still stuck to the wall. His body seemed to be breaking numerous times just to fit Misha Penley. He began to howl like a wounded wolf and his skin began to fall off, revealing the red muscle underneath. He grew back, only this time he grew to about 2.50 meters and was much thinner. Seeing this, Adrian tried to move quickly towards the stairs of the 3rd floor, but before getting close, James freed himself from the wall, and while holding his head to try to fight against the loss of control, he began to hit his head against everything, leaving a sinking hole on the wall covered in his blood. As he did this, James ended up in the hallway in front of the stairs and fell to the ground as he began to convulse. Seeing this, Adrian could only begin to curse under his breath as his only exit was blocked. Trying to think of something, he looked at a lit lamp hanging on the wall next to him. It seems that the plan is still in place, was what Adrian thought as he grabbed the lamp and took out his second revolver from its holster. Aiming at the gunpowder barrels that the 3 of them had put together, Adrian fired all 6 shots from his revolver at them, causing some parts to break and causing the gunpowder to spill out. He quickly put the revolver in its holster under his left armpit, grabbed the lamp with his right hand, and prepared to throw it. But before he did, James's screams stopped, being replaced by growls. Looking at where he was, Adrian saw something that made his blood run cold. James had completely lost control, leaving a werewolf of 2.60 meters, skinless and sickly thin. If one compared, it would be extremely similar to the werewolf in Harry Potter. Seeing how the eyes of that monster were looking at him with foam coming out of his mouth, Adrian threw the lamp with all his might towards the barrels at the same time that James began to move towards him. Adrian launched himself down the stairs to the 4th floor as James walked past the barrels as the lamp fell on them. A huge explosion filled the entire cannon room and engulfed the monster James as he screamed. The explosion was powerful enough to split the old, shabby ship apart. As the ship sank, the thunder rolled loudly. The strong storm then began to calm down, allowing a view of a mist-shrouded island in the distance. It was already daylight on the island and the fog had disappeared. Looking at a beach on the side of the island, one could see that it was littered with pieces of a ship. Suddenly on the shore, a person came out of the water and then walked to the beach to drop on the sand. The person was a man with red hair and a torn shirt, brown pants, and a holster with a revolver under his left armpit. This was Adrian Kenway, who had spent the last 3 hours swimming his way to the island. He was alone and there was no sign of anyone else on the entire beach. Shit, I didn't think the explosion would have been that big, Adrian thought as he sat up holding his stomach. Peeling off his shirt, Adrian checked his injuries. He had a large number of scratches and bruises all over his body from the explosion, a large scratch on his chest, and a huge black bruise on his stomach, which would be where James kicked him. And I thought James kicked hard, he said with a sigh. He couldn't check his back, but it should be the same as his stomach. Sighing again, Adrian put his torn shirt back on and then took the revolver out of its holster and opened the cylinder, removing the casings and putting in new bullets. He still had 11 bullets left. Now he was going to check the remains of the ship that managed to reach the beach. Hoping to find some new clothes since he couldn't meet people the way he looked now. He spent an hour going through the remains but couldn't find anything of use. Giving up and thinking that he would have to steal clothes, he was about to leave when he saw that the tide was washing something black on the beach. He looked and saw what looked like a body that was so burned that it was no longer recognizable. The only thing that could be said was its great size of 2.60 meters. Holding the revolver firmly, Adrian pointed at the body, approaching slowly, but when he got closer he proceeded to put the revolver back in its holster. It was James who lost control, but he was dead. He said that because there was a huge piece of wood impaling him from his right hip until it came out of his left shoulder. Ads by PubFuture. Analyzing his body, there was nothing useful if there ever was. The explosion destroyed it. He looked at James's left arm and noticed that it was covered in fur. A little puzzled, he looked at it a little better, but then he felt a strong pang in his head. Realizing what it was, Adrian quickly moved as far away from the body as possible. When a Beander loses control, it leaves a sealed artifact behind when it dies. James's left arm was one of them, and Adrian, being a normal person, had no way of dealing with it. I shouldn't touch it, but it's an artifact from a Sequence 7 Beander. It will be very dangerous for someone to find it and touch it. Quickly thinking of what to do, Adrian looked at the body from a good distance away, but something behind the body caught his attention. It was a blue suitcase that was floating on the surface of the water, so Adrian quickly went back into the water to pick it up. Back on the beach away from James's body, we can see how Adrian was trying to open the suitcase. Being one with a lock with a 4-number combination, Adrian wasn't going to spend his time trying all the combinations, so he was hitting it with a rock. After the 5th blow, the lock finally broke, allowing him to see what was inside. It was a black suit with a white shirt, shoes, and a cane. There was also a wallet that contained 6 pounds and 13 soles. This caused Adrian to burst into laughter and tears. Finally, a bit of luck for him. After the shit that happened as soon as he woke up, this certainly made him happy to tears. He quickly dug a hole behind a tree and buried his old clothes there. And then he quickly went into the water to wash off the blood better and changed into the black suit. Picking up the suitcase, Adrian looked out over the ocean, trying to see if he could see Alice and Sarah. But nothing else washed ashore, so all Adrian could do was bow to the sea in honor of Alice and Sarah and the people who stayed inside the boat. Ads by PubFuture. Hoping that their souls would find peace in the divine realm of their gods, and also hoping the blonde sisters survived but ended up on another island. After that, he quickly left the beach in the direction of the port. After not a very long walk, he finally managed to get there, so quickly moving between the houses and towards what seemed to be a restaurant, he entered and sat down at one of the free tables. The people there looked at him strangely, but after that they ignored him. This calmed down Adrian greatly, and once again he blessed his luck with the suitcase. After a while, a waiter came to his table with a notebook ready to write down this redhead's order. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Green Lemon Restaurant. Is there anything you would like to order?" When the waiter said that, he could see how the gentleman in front of him turned pale and his eyes widened. Surprised by this, the waiter quickly spoke again, worried that the gentleman would go into cardiac arrest. "Sir, are you okay? If you like, I will bring you a glass of water." Adrian, still very stunned by the waiter's words, simply looked at him and asked, "Sorry, yes, I'm fine, but what did you say the name of the restaurant was?" "Sir, this is the Green Lemon Restaurant, the most famous restaurant in all of Bansi Harbord," was the proud response of the waiter. "I would like lunch for the day and a glass of cold water, please," was Adrian's mechanical response. The waiter noted down Adrian's order and bowed slightly. "Perfect, sir. I'll bring you your lunch in a while." With that said, the waiter went to deliver his order, leaving Adrian alone again. Wasn't it that my luck had improved? Why of all places did I have to stop at Bansi Harbord? Asked Adrian in his head, cursing his luck and thinking that as soon as he had lunch, he would try to buy the first boat ticket to get out of here. Thunder and heavy rain started suddenly outside the restaurant, and the waiters stopped everything they were doing and went to close the door and windows and put up barricades. A man suddenly raised his voice. "Listen everyone, until the storm passes no one can go out, so please those who have a room go to rest and those who do not have one will be provided by the restaurant." "I'm an unlucky bastard," was what Adrian thought with disdain. When the waiter who served him closed the door to his room, Adrian looked around. It was a small room with a small bed and a small desk with red walls and a barricaded window. There was nothing else. Considering that this is a room for those who did not already have one in the restaurant, the quality was quite decent. Taking off his shoes and shirt, Adrian sat on the bed looking at the floor. He had managed to escape from his captors and was finally going to sleep in a real bed. Although barely 3 days had passed since he woke up, it had been the closest experience to death that he had ever had. He was so tired and now he could sleep peacefully. Ignoring the strong storm outside, Adrian lay down on the bed and let the world of dreams wrap him up again. In his dream, Adrian found himself at home again, only he was in the living room watching television, but this time he was with his brother. His brother was still the same as he remembered. He was 1.78 meters tall and was a gym man and had good muscles, not like one of those bloated ones but like those of swimmers. He had their mom's tan skin, and another difference between them was that he didn't like to have a beard, so he always had a clean-shaven chin and neatly trimmed hair. He was a party guy, so many times he would be out while he stayed home sleeping or reading novels. But despite these personality differences, they still loved each other and found common topics to talk about. Being video games, movies, or series. Now they were watching one of their all-time favorite shows. El Chavo del 8 Feet. The two of them, whenever an episode was reproduced, would see it. Looking in the upper left corner of the TV, Adrian could see the date. December 23, 2022, seems to be the same day as the last one, he said to himself as he turned again to see his brother in his previous body. Seeing that nothing else was happening unlike the last dream, Adrian took the opportunity to sit next to his brother to watch the episode with them. Halfway through the episode, he saw how his previous self turned to look at his brother. "Cruyff, you don't mind if I ask you something?" "No, what's up, Joa?" Ads by PubFuture. "Don't you feel like there's a weird aura going on lately? Did you smoke weed or something? Everything feels the same as ever." "Yes, you're right, maybe it was that horror movie marathon I did a few days ago, it still gives me a chill," Joa said as he laughed, and they went back to watching TV. Seeing the short interaction, Adrian simply shook his head and continued watching TV with his past self and his brother, but his mind began to wander. His younger brother was called Cruyff in honor of a soccer player because his dad was a big fan of him. Remembering a little, his mom told him that even his dad was going to name him Maradona, but she stopped him and they ended up calling him Joa. Laughing somewhat sadly at the memory, he returned his attention to the TV. While all this was happening in Adrian's dream, in the real world things were not as calm as in the dream. The storm had become even stronger and the thunder was falling with more force. Never in the history of Bansi Harbort had there been such a strong storm. In Adrian's room, he was still asleep despite all the noise, which one could say was nonsense, but he was ignorant of the outside world. Suddenly the storm became even angrier and the thunder began to fall with more force in the middle of the street. But again Adrian was ignorant to everything. When the storm reached a peak never seen before in the history of the island, a yellow smoke began to seep through the walls, floor, and ceiling of Adrian's room and began to envelop him. When it seemed to form a cocoon around him, this smoke began to enter Adrian's body. This caused him to move a bit, but he still didn't wake up. After a while, all the smoke entered inside him, leaving no trace that it was ever there. And Adrian was still asleep, oblivious to what had just happened to him. After that, the storm began to calm down slowly but did not stop until 6 hours later. When the storm finally stopped, there was a knock on Adrian's bedroom door which woke him from his sleep. Rubbing his eyes to get rid of the dream and also to wipe away the tears that began to fall as soon as he woke up. He missed his brother coming. Responding to the person behind the door, Adrian put his clothes and shoes back on and opened the door. Ads by PubFuture. It was the waiter and he looked miserable. He didn't seem to have rested at all, and when the waiter saw him he looked at him with a look full of surprise and shock. Adrian looked quite full of energy. It seemed that the storm had not affected him at all. "What a lucky bastard," was what the waiter thought, and quickly opened his mouth to speak. "Sir, the storm has already passed and you can retire safely if you like. You can have dinner here in the restaurant, the house pays." Before Adrian could think of what to do, his stomach growled loudly, causing his face and the waiter's face to flush slightly. "I'll take the offer. Thank you very much, I'll be down in a moment," was all he said before closing the door in the waiter's face. While at the table eating the restaurant's specialty, Adrian couldn't help but applaud the elves for inventing such curious dishes with blood. They were quite filling even if they didn't look like it. which he was grateful for. After all, he hadn't eaten anything in 3 days. After eating all the food, he thanked the waiter for his services and went to the port with the suitcase in hand to buy a ticket to leave Bansi as soon as possible. Although before leaving he decided to leave a gift to the Church of Storms. Holding the stone with the wrapped note, he threw it and it went through the upper window of the church. He quickly got out of there before they caught him. The note had the location of James's body, so he left the job of retrieving it to the professionals. So he went to the port. Arriving in front of the ticket seller before Adrian could ask the price of the boat rooms, the seller rudely pointed to the wall next to him. Looking, there was a sign with all the prices and rules of the boat. Of course, there it is, Adrian thought as the corners of his mouth twitched. Requesting a ticket for a second-class room, the next boat would leave in an hour, so Adrian simply sat on a bench to wait. After the promised time, the boat arrived and Adrian rose to line up to the board. Adrian never noticed that there was a man sitting next to him on the bench who stared at him the entire time he waited until he boarded. He was a man with a simple white cloak, golden hair and beard, and a silver cross on his neck. He looked like a common priest and he had eyes pure and innocent like a child. Interesting, was the only thing the man said when he saw Adrian enter the boat. If Adrian had seen him, his heart would have jumped out of his chest. But the bench was already empty. After a few days of traveling at sea, the ship finally reached its destination at 3 p.m. Seeing the city, Adrian couldn't help but complain in his heart. When the book mentions that it had a yellowish fog and a horrible air, I didn't think it would be so bad, he thought as he covers his mouth and nose with a napkin. That's right, Adrian had come to Backland and the main reason for that was to be able to grow and make some money. Before he left the port, he bought a newspaper from a boy for 1p. Then he got on a public carriage that took him to the Backland Bridge area. Giving 3p to the driver, Adrian started looking for a particular bar. Bingo, he muttered when he saw a building with the sign he was looking for. Braveheart's Bar. Quickly entering the bar, Adrian walked up to the front and sat down in a vacant spot. Looking sideways at the red-haired man who had just entered, the bartender approached while cleaning a cup. "What do you want to drink?" the man asked bluntly. "Southville beer please," answered Adrian without caring about the man's attitude. Nodding at the redhead's choice, the bartender quickly pulled a bottle from a cabinet behind him and poured Adrian a drink. "Here 5 pence," taking the coins out of his wallet, Adrian extended his hand to pay the man. The man reached out and picked up the coins, but before he could go to attend to someone else, Adrian stopped him. "I want to see the old man," he said quietly to the bartender. When he said this, the man's face became extremely serious and he stared at his face, trying to scare him away. "Who are you to look at me like that? I got into a fight with a drug addict who had more fingers than teeth and I had the horrible face of a werewolf inches from ripping my face off. Do you really think your bully grandpa face is going to scare me?" Adrian insulted in his heart, but his face remained calm. After a while, the bartender looked away and continued to clean another glass. "Ads by PubFuture, 2nd floor, 3rd door on the left," was all he said. Nodding, Adrian quickly grabbed the cup of Southville beer and drank it all in one gulp before the bartender's stunned eyes. There are advantages to having a party brother. Slamming the empty cup on the table, Adrian quickly ran up the stairs and reached the aforementioned door. Taking a deep breath to calm down a bit, he opened the door and stepped inside. It was a large room with a pool table in the center where some men were playing, and there were other tables where others were playing cards. All of them had a cold air about them except one. It was a man who was at the pool table playing. Seeing this, Adrian approached this man with calm steps before the cold eyes of all the other men. "Good afternoon, Mr. Old Man, I'm sorry to bother you, but I require your services," he said as he bowed in front of him. "Who told you about me?" Completely ignoring what Adrian had said, he asked. Smiling as he looked at the man, Adrian replied, "Another old man." When he said that, some of those who were playing cards put them down and began to stare at him while one began to growl at him. The old man's eyebrows began to twitch, but he took a breath and looked back at him. "What do you want? I don't have all day," as he said that he returned his attention to the pool game and prepared to take his turn. "I want you to introduce me to the extraordinary party to participate." When he said that, the old man hit one of the billiard balls and some of the men who were playing cards stood up. Returning his attention to Adrian, the old man looked at him from head to toe multiple times and spoke while looking into his eyes. "You're a little young to deal with that kind of people. It doesn't matter, I want to attend. £2. Seeing that Adrian didn't care about his opinion, he gave a price. Ads by PubFuture. Smiling, Adrian gave him the money, and when the old man checked it and put it in his pocket, he looked at it again. You're in luck, boy. A party will be held in a few hours. If you like, you can wait here or come back at 2000. I'll stay here if you don't mind, was all that Adrian answered while he sat down in a free chair and took out the newspaper he bought earlier to read it. I didn't think you were going to stay. Nobody usually takes that option, was what the old man thought, looking at the redhead who was reading. Obviously, Adrian was going to take the option to stay. After all, he still didn't have a place to live. After said hours, the elders turned to Adrian, who had already been reading the newspaper 7 times. Before we go, tell me if you have something to cover your body and face. I don't have, so I hope you sell that too, Mr. Old Man, was Adrian's quick response. The old man's eyebrows trembled again and he took another breath to calm down. £1 for everything. Why don't you ask me to walk barefoot through broken glass? He inwardly cursed at the price as he gave the old man the money. Now he only had 12 soldi left. After obtaining the mask and cloak, Adrian and the old man left the bar through a back door and headed to the party venue. Arriving in front of a metallic door in an alleyway, the old man approached and gave 3 short blows with an interval of 4 seconds between each one and 2 strong blows with an interval of 2 seconds. After a few moments, a man in a cloak and a mask that reached to the bridge of his nose opened the door. They entered and the guard closed the door again. In the center of the room, there were several tables quite separated from each other, some were already occupied. And in front of all of them was a masked man sitting watching as they all sat down in their places. After 15 minutes and seeing that no one else arrived, the frontman got up from his chair and spoke. Seeing that some friends didn't make it, we'll start the party. For the new members, allow me to welcome you and introduce myself. I am Mr. Eye of Wisdom. Finally, was all Adrian thought with a smile when the party finally started. It was time to make some money. If there is any formula that you want to verify, for a fee, I can do it. When he finished saying that, Mr. Eye of Wisdom sat down and another man got up and made a request. This is how time passed, one transaction after another. Adrian began to worry that the person he was looking for had not attended the party and this would cause him many problems. After a little while and one successful transaction, a masked woman rose from her seat. I'm looking for the barbarian formula, is there anyone who has it? I'm willing to pay with pounds or something of equivalent value, was the lady's request. There you are, beautiful lady, was what Adrian thought with great joy upon hearing the woman's request, since she was exactly who he was looking for. Looking around, the woman hoped someone spoke, but seeing that no one said anything, she sighed in defeat and was about to sit down, but she just heard someone speak. I got it. The lady quickly looked for the person who spoke and saw a man with his left arm raised wearing a coat and a mask on his face. How much do you want for it? Asked the woman with barely contained anxiety. She had been looking for the formula for months and was finally about to obtain it. £400. Would you like Mr. Eye of Wisdom to verify it? Deal, and yes, was the quick response of the woman. A masked worker brought him paper and a pen on a tray. Adrian took it, wrote the formula on it and folded it, and placed it on the tray again. Then the worker took the tray with the note to Mr. Eye of Wisdom. When the worker got to the man's side, he put the tray on a table next to him. Lord Wisdom Eye then took out a ring from a silver container. It is a ring encrusted with many tiny diamonds. It is complicated and exquisite in design. In the middle of the ring is a dark green gem that looks like an eye, and just looking at it made Adrian feel like a teenager again as he took his chemistry test. Mr. Eye of Wisdom put it in his left hand and quickly placed it on top of the note without opening it. Valid, was all he said before quickly removing the ring and placing it back in the container. So the worker took the tray with the note and took it to the lady. She then placed the £400 on the tray and took the note with the formula and wasted no time in opening and reading it. Potion Formula Sequence 8, Barbarian. Main ingredients: Grass of Madness, Core Horn Crystal of a Land Rhinoceros. Supplementary ingredients: *1 deep-grained walnut, *1 fragrance hornet grass. Ads by PubFuture. *10 ml of the extract obtained from soaking poplar bark. *100 ml of liquor. Sighing happily, the woman put the note away. She finally had the formula. When Adrian received the money and counted it, he got up and spoke. I'm selling the formula for briber. Is anyone interested? This caused the woman who had just bought the formula for Barbarian to freeze. After searching so long for the Barbarian formula, she didn't think that the Briber formula would appear so fast, and she didn't want to miss the opportunity. But there was a problem. She had no more money. Cursing internally, she still decided to give it a try. After all, who knew how long it would take her to find the formula again? I want it, but I don't have money. I don't know if you would be interested in a weapon of a similar level. I'm sorry, but now I only need pounds, but I'll be here at the next meeting, so bring 800 pounds at that time and the formula is yours. Upon hearing this, a weight was lifted from the lady's back and she simply nodded. She had the money in her house. But Adrian still wasn't done, and he made another request. I'm looking for the Hunter formula. Is there anyone selling it? Here was Adrian's shot at heaven. The fact of getting money was the main reason for coming to this party, but if he managed to get the formula for Hunter, he would have killed two birds with one stone. When she heard this, the woman who had promised to come to the meeting next time raised her arm. I have it, it will be 200 pounds, was what she said. Deal, Mr. Eye of Wisdom, please notify the formula, Adrian said simply, while in his mind he was screaming with joy. After the previous process was repeated, Adrian paid the 200 pounds to the lady and the 20 pounds to Mr. Eye of Wisdom. Holding the note with the formula in his hands, Adrian sighed and opened the note. Potion Formula Sequence 9, Hunter. Main ingredients. Every drop of blood from an abyss demon fish. * 50 grams of panther blood crystal. Supplementary ingredients. * 100 milliliters of purified water. Ads by PubFuture. * 7 red mint leaves. * 5 drops of July wine juice. * 9 grams of dragon blood grass powder. Closing the note again, Adrian put it in his pocket and just waited for the party to end. After 1 hour, 3 unsuccessful and 1 successful deal were made. While this was going on, Mr. Eye of Wisdom rang a bell and got up from his chair. The party is over now, you will proceed to leave one by one, so wait your turn. Fortunately, there were no big exchanges, but Adrian and the old man were the second to leave the party through one of the 5 different exits. They then returned to the billiards room on the 2nd floor of Braveheart's bar, where the old man told him how to know when the next meeting was through the newspaper and how to read the password in the advertising part. Then Adrian bowed and asked if he could sleep in there for the night. Mr. Old Man accepted and allowed him to sleep on top of the pool table as long as he cleaned the whole room before leaving. On the morning of the next day, Adrian left. 5 minutes after Adrian left, in the room next to the pool room there was a man who was alone. He is about 28 years old, with a pale face and mischievous brown eyes, wearing a white shirt and a black vest. Who was it that spoke to the old man? Asked the man in the air. Suddenly a woman was reflected in the window and came out like a ghost. She was a young woman with a pale face, blonde hair, blue eyes, and delicate features. She was wearing a black Gothic royal dress and a soft hat. Just someone curious, was all she said before sitting on a chair like a doll. Getting back to Adrian, now that he had money, he was finally looking for a house to live in during the time he would stay in Backland. After getting into another carriage, Adrian asked the driver to take him to a company that does apartment rentals. After a series of annoying transactions and annoying landlords, Adrian was finally inside his new house in a middle-class neighborhood in Backland after making a deposit for half a year of £25, which left him with £155. Putting his blue suitcase in a corner, Adrian took out the note with the formula of Hunter again. It was time to get the ingredients. Hello, happy new year to everyone reading this. Author here. I just want to say thanks for the support. If you could leave comments, I will be very happy because I would love to read your thoughts on my book and opinions on how this is going. I invented Hunter's formula because it has not yet been revealed. Tell me your opinions about it and if you like it. Quickly 3 days passed and one could see Adrian at home looking at his table that was full of ingredients. The supplementary ingredients had been very easy to get. He only had to go to a pharmaceutical store to get them, and he got the July wine juice from a bar, while the panther blood crystal had to go to a jewelry store. The only ingredient that was a problem was the blood of the abyss demon fish, but after going to a port and promising a fisherman 30 pounds to get it for him, he brought it to him the next day. Money certainly moves the world, Adrian murmured, looking at the blood in the vial on the table. It was blackish with a dark aura. According to the fisherman, the blood of this fish could be used to make a poison capable of killing a horse in less than 3 minutes. Sighing, Adrian went to his kitchen and took out a pot from it. After washing it deeply and waiting for it to dry, he placed it on the table. Guided by the book, the first thing he placed were the supplementary ingredients, the 100 milliliters of purified water, then he placed the 7 red mint leaves, the 9 grams of dragon grass powder, and the 5 drops of July wine juice. When the last drop of the juice fell into the liquid, it quickly turned brown. Now came the main ingredients. Adrian grabbed the vial with the abyss demon fish's blood and poured it into the pot. This caused the previous brown liquid to turn black and very thick. Quickly Adrian grabbed the last ingredient, which was the panther blood crystal, and placed it in the pot. At first, nothing happened. The red crystal remained floating in the thick black liquid without changing anything. This scared Adrian a lot, thinking that when placing the ingredients he had made a mistake. But suddenly the crystal was rapidly melting into the black liquid, causing it to turn reddish-brown and become more liquid. Realizing that the potion was ready, Adrian grabbed the pot and poured the finished potion into a cup he had ready. And just like in the book, there wasn't a remnant of the potion left in the pot. Holding the potion in his hands, Adrian's heart was beating with great force. Once he drank this, his life could never be normal and he would live the rest of his life on the edge of the abyss. Ads by PubFuture. But this is already a crazy world that is rapidly falling into the same abyss. Why better than waiting for the gods to protect him when the end comes? Wouldn't it be better for him to have the power to protect himself when the abyss falls on this world? Adrian quickly closed his eyes and began to meditate to calm his anxiety. This caused him not to see how the yellowish smoke that had entered his body while he was sleeping quickly entered the potion, making it somewhat brighter. When Adrian decided that he was ready, he drank the potion without noticing that it was a little brighter than before. The potion was so thick it seemed to stick to the throat and had an extremely bitter taste that made Adrian almost spit it out. But he ignored this discomfort and swallowed the entire potion, leaving nothing in the cup. He almost immediately felt his body begin to heat up rapidly, so he entered a lotus meditation posture. He quickly began to outline a sphere of light in his mind as he felt his body heat up even more, and he began to feel pain. When he thought that his body couldn't get any warmer and the pain threatened to take him out of the meditative state, it diminished rapidly. When the pain disappeared, he still did not come out of the meditative state but decided to wait a little longer. Suddenly the sphere of light that he was outlining in his mind disappeared and was replaced by a large city that had yellowish smoke around it. Adrian found himself standing in the doorway admiring this strange city. This city is very similar to Asuncion in my previous life. Wait, what's happening? I was supposed to be meditating to accommodate the potion. Adrian thought, alarmed when he realized that something had gone wrong. He shouldn't be here. Adrian could see that it also seemed to be inhabited by human-like beings. These seemed to be beings of fire dressed in rusty red armor that patrolled the city, protecting it from any threat that would approach. Suddenly all these beings stopped their patrol, turned to look at Adrian, and made a military salute towards him. This causes his meditation state to be broken and he returned to his body. Ads by PubFuture. What was that? Was the first thing that Adrian said to the air, but when he saw that he had returned to his body, he calmed down a little. Feeling his body, Adrian noted that he had grown much stronger physically and his senses had become sharper. Looking around him, he suddenly got multiple ideas for setting traps around and inside his house. So this is a Beander. As he said that, he clenched his fist, feeling the new strength that he now possessed. Smelling stinky, Adrian went to his bathroom. He was covered in sweat and had a strong odor, so he went to take a shower. Coming out of his shower, Adrian walks into his room with a towel around his waist and looks at himself in his bedroom mirror. Adrian was quite tall at a proud 1.84 meters. His body was already muscular, only now he looked stronger than before, and he had several scars all over it and his necklace was hanging on his chest. Looking at his face, Adrian could tell that he was quite handsome, and his reddish-brown eyes and red hair gave him an exotic touch. Putting on a pair of pants, Adrian sat on his bed and thought about what he had seen in his meditation. If I'm not mistaken, that should be the City of Calamities, but how is it possible? Isn't it supposed to be sealed in the Western continent? And how did I accommodate it so easily? Am I the plan B of some unknown existence that was able to take me out of my world and bring me here? Knowing that the more he tried to understand what was happening could end up killing him, Adrian could only put it in the back of his mind and deal with it later. The problem now will be to digest the potion as quickly as possible before some, which, is attracted to me. A decent part of the potion is already digested, it must be from the trap against Thames and how I killed him. So, one of the rules of acting for the hunter is to know your prey well, set a trap according to the prey and hunt the prey. Sensing a slight hint of digestion, Adrian knew he was correct and quickly changed into his suit and headed to Braveheart's bar. It was time to act. Arriving at the Braveheart's bar, Adrian again asked to see the old man. Being in the same room on the second floor, Adrian entered and saw that the old man was still with the same cold people, but this time there was someone new. He is about 28 years old, with a pale face and malicious brown eyes. He was wearing a white shirt and a black vest. Glancing sideways at this person, Adrian returned his gaze to the old man. "A pleasure to see you, Mr. Marich," greeted Adrian in his mind before speaking to the old man. "I'm looking to join hunting clubs, I'm looking for one that continually goes out on hunts and has target practice." Looking at the red-haired man, the old man could tell that he now had a stronger aura. "That will be 14 souls for the search and the information will be given to you tomorrow at 9 o'clock a.m. Nodding, Adrian handed him the money and before leaving he turned to see Marich and gave him a nod. Marich just looked at him and he left. When Adrian left, he took advantage and bought a newspaper for another boy to read at home. Arriving home while Adrian was eating meat and rice with white bread and black coffee for lunch, he was reading the newspaper in search of publicity for the next extraordinary party. Finding the ad and using the method that the old man taught him, he read that the next party would be in 3 days at 5 p.m. Nodding, Adrian finished eating and didn't wait until the next day. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., Adrian had returned to the bar and met with the elder again and he gave him the information he wanted. Reading it, Adrian saw that there were a good number of clubs that fit his criteria but only 3 caught his attention. Red Foxes, a club that has 100 years of history and a good reputation. The grandson of the founder is the current leader of the club. They go hunting every 3 days in the forest armed with hunting rifles and their shooting practices are in the top 10 of the list and membership to the club is £90. Stanley. It is the oldest club on the list with a history of 300 years and has several members who are nobles. They go hunting every 4 days on horses and hunting weapons, their shooting ranges are the best on the entire list and they provide a vast majority of other services. Their subscription is £200. Ads by PubFuture. The Classics. It is a club that has a somewhat young history of 70 years and they are the ones that go hunting more often, being that they go every day but their hunting methods are the most curious because they only use traps and not weapons, that's why they're allowed to go hunting so often and their shooting ranges are decent. They don't have many members. Their subscription is £60. Adrian didn't think much and decided on the Classics, and checking its location he quickly went to the club. It was a 2-story building with a sign that said the name of the club. Entering the building he saw a man behind a desk reading a book ignoring everything around him. Because his senses had been sharpened by the potion, Adrian could see the details of the man and the name of the book. Stormwind Mountain Villa. Adrian's eyebrows trembled but he kept his expression calm and took a closer look at the man's appearance. He was a 27-year-old man with a delicate face and blonde hair and his eyes were soft. Very handsome if I'm honest, thought Adrian. Approaching the desk with calm steps, the blonde man finally noticed his presence and quickly put the book away with a little embarrassment. "Welcome, sir, to the Classics, how can I help you?" "I am looking to join the club, I wonder if it is with you that I have to ask about it." This took the blonde a bit by surprise but he snapped out of it and responded enthusiastically. "Yes sir, please wait while I take out the papers." Said that the blonde stood up allowing him to see his height of 1.72 meters and he opened a cabinet behind him, taking out a small stack of papers from it. Placing it in front of him, Adrian the blonde told him what it contained. "These are the rules, regulations, and services provided by the club, if you agree to follow them you can join without any problem after paying the subscription." Picking up the small stack of papers, Adrian nodded to the blonde and began to read them calmly. There was nothing out of the ordinary and the rules were something any club had and the services were exactly what Adrian was looking for. Seeing that there was nothing strange about them he handed the stack back to the blonde and agreed to join. This visibly cheered the blonde. Perfect sir, it would be £60 and you will become an official member. Ads by PubFuture. Taking the money out of his wallet, Adrian handed the money over to the blonde. Perfect, please tell me your name so I can put it on your identification card. Adrian Kenway. Saying that, the blonde quickly wrote the name on a grey card and handed it to Adrian. Welcome to the Classics Hunting Club. I introduce myself, I'm Robert Patino, it's a pleasure to have you as a member. While saying this, he extended his hand, which was just as delicate as his face. Holding the hand, Adrian shook it. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Robert. If you like, you can go upstairs to meet some of the members present, or you can also go to the next room to meet the shooting instructor, Mr. Grievous. I'll go meet the other members first, then I'll meet Mr. Grievous. Perfect. The stairs to the second floor or down the hall to the left, and again a pleasure to meet you. Nodding to Mr. Robert, Adrian made his way to the second floor at a leisurely pace. When he went up, he saw a large room with walls lined with the heads of different animals that the club had hunted. With a cabinet full of drinks on one side and some pool tables, which about 3 men were talking and playing. When they saw Adrian arrive, they stopped their conversation and began to approach him. The 3 of them looked like they were 30 years old, but they had strong bodies. One of them was with the arms of the shirt rolled up with a grey vest and a well-groomed beard. Another with only a simple shirt. And the last one wore a black vest with a well-ironed shirt. Giving a small bow, the redhead introduced himself with a small smile. A pleasure to meet you, I am Adrian Kenway, I hope we can get along. While they looked at Adrian, 2 of them started whispering among themselves, but thanks to the senses brought by the potion, Adrian could hear them loud and clear. It certainly has been a while since a new member joined us. You're right, Charles, and also a young one. It's a bit rude not to introduce ourselves to Mr. Adrian. Realizing this disrespect, the other men turned their attention back to Adrian. Sorry for that offense, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Charles Brown. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Adrian. Mr. Charles was the man with the grey vest and well-groomed beard. Please excuse the manners, comrade, I'm Victor Magnus, it's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Adrian. Mr. Victor was the man in the simple shirt. Leaving these aside, I introduce myself, I am Isaac Rumi and I am the current owner of the club. Welcome, Mr. Adrian. Mr. Isaac was the one who wore the black vest with the well-ironed shirt. Adrian gave a slight bow. It is also a pleasure to meet you too, Mr. Isaac, Mr. Charles, and Mr. Victor, I hope we can get along well. This made Isaac smile while Charles and Victor just nodded. Would you like to play some pool with us so we can get to know each other a little better? Adrian turned to look at the clock and seeing that it was just 11 o'clock, he agreed. While playing with them, Adrian was able to learn a little about each one and a little more about the missing members of the club, which according to Isaac were around 8. Victor was a 32-year-old single man who believed in the Lord of Storms, and every chance he got he would proclaim his belief. Charles was a 31-year-old married man who was expecting his first child in December and was a believer in the God of knowledge and wisdom. While Isaac was 40 years old, married with 2 sons and a daughter, he was a believer in the Evernight goddess. Honestly, it was very curious that a believer in the Lord of Storms and another believer in the Evernight goddess would get along so well, but Adrian was not one to judge, he had seen worse. After playing for about 2 hours and losing several times, Adrian said goodbye to the 3 of them and went back to Robert. Looking at the blonde, Adrian saw that he was reading Stormwind Mountain Villa again. When Robert noticed that someone had entered the room, quickly put the book under the desk. Seeing that it was Adriana, this managed to calm him down a bit. Hello again, Mr. Adrian, you seem to have gotten along well with Mr. Isaac, Mr. Charles, and Mr. Victor. Ads by PubFuture. Hello, Mr. Robert, yes, it seems that they were quite kind to me, which makes me happy. That's good, I'm glad you got along, and then tell me, Mr. Adrian. What do you need from me? I would like to go with Mr. Grievous for target practice. Or then go down the right hallway and down to the basement, that's where he teaches. Thanking Robert for the instructions, Adrian went to the basement and managed to see that it was very open and conditioned for target practice. An older man was sitting in a chair against the wall as he read the newspaper, ignorant of his surroundings. This man looked 40 years old and was already bald and had a short elegant mustache and seemed to have a monocle over his left eye. This almost made Adrian grab the handle of his revolver under his jacket on reflex. Taking quick breaths to calm down, Adrian approached the supposed Mr. Grievous. Only when Adrian was next to the man did he seem to notice his presence. Folding the newspaper and putting it on his lap, Grievous gave Adrian an annoyed look. What do you want, brat? Can't you see I'm reading? If you want to use the shooting range ahead, just don't bother me. When he finished saying that, he opened the newspaper again. This caused Adrian to just stare at him in shock, with his eyebrow twitching in annoyance. A bald and embittered old man. Just my luck. I'm sorry, Mr. Grievous, but in fact, I'm here for you to teach me how to shoot. This caused Grievous to refold the journal and place it on a table next to him. Okay, Brad, tell me, do you have your own revolver or are you going to rent one from the club? I have my own revolver. Well, I can teach you every day for 2 hours starting at 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. If it's not at that time, I'm sorry, it's not my problem. This almost made Adrian lose his mind, and he wanted to jump on the bald old man who was bothering him so much. How come those simple insults bothered him so much? He had received much worse ones, but those never bothered him as much as this old man. Wait, my condition is not normal. Those words would never have bothered me, but why do they now? Ads by PubFuture. Noticing his condition, Adrian took a breath to calm down and think better. Understanding what was happening, Adrian just smiled at Grievous, causing him to be slightly surprised. Sounds like a good deal to me, so let's start, Mr. Grievous. Snapping out of his surprise, Grievous gave Adrian a sharp smile. I won't be a gentle brat. I don't expect it to be. Adrian responded with an equally sharp smile. Where are you supposed to aim? Do you want to hit someone? Snotty brat, my newborn granddaughter has a better aim than you. Let me stand in front of the target, since that is the safest place here. And so the 2 hours passed, and Grievous, for every shot that Adrian missed, followed him with an insult. But Adrian didn't miss too badly. It seems the potion helped his aim, and he only missed 7 of the 40 shots he fired. But those that missed the target, Grievous made sure to remember. Well, brat, class time is up. You didn't do too bad, so I'll be waiting for you tomorrow. When Grievous said that, he went to his chair, sat back down, and went back to reading the newspaper. Stowing the revolver in its holster under his left armpit, Adrian nodded. And as he went up the stairs to leave the basement, Adrian turned to look at Grievous and gave him a very sharp smile. I will wait for your classes, Mr. Provoker. When he said that, Adrian went back up the stairs without looking back to see how Grievous dropped the journal in shock as he turned to see his back. As Adrian left, Grievous smiled, picked up the journal, and read it again. What an interesting brat, he said to the air while reading. Dash 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 dash. Good morning, guys. Author here. Today I am extremely inspired, and I am going to post another 8 chapters before the end of the day, so we will see each other in a bit. Besides, I'm sorry if some conversations feel weird. I'm not good at writing them. If you have any advice, feel free to write it in the comments. I'll be happy to read them. And thanks to DuistFern_Ando for supporting this story and for the funny comments. When Adrian came out of the basement, he said goodbye to Robert and left the club. Taking another public carriage, Adrian headed back to Braveheart's bar. Entering the bar, which was quite lively, he turned to the bartender and again asked to speak to the old man. The old man was still in the same room as always, and Wach was still with him playing cards with his zombies. It's like watching Naruto play cards with his clones, kind of sad honestly. Doesn't Miss Sharon like to play cards? Insulting Wach in his mind without him realizing it, Adrian nodded to him again but was ignored again. Without giving importance to that, Adrian addressed the old man again. What do you want now? The old man asked with annoyance, since Adrian always seemed to look for him like a lost puppy. I want to leave a commission to meet a person. Adrian didn't care at all for the old man's tone and stated his reason for coming to see him. Well, do you have any details about the person you're looking for, or information that would be useful in finding them? It's a woman. She is very short, 152 centimeters in height. She has soft facial features, making her appear to be young and immature. She has shoulder-length blonde hair, and although is messy and unkempt, she carries an indescribable look of dignity and a convincing charm. She also has malt-colored skin and frequents East Backland a lot, and her name is Zio Derecha. The old man didn't expect Adrian to have so many details about the person he was looking for, and even Marich couldn't help but stop looking at his cards and stare at the redhead. But the redhead didn't care about the look of the two and kept talking. The commission consists of bringing her here to Braveheart's bar so that I can meet her, and as a reward, it will be £20. I will be here every afternoon from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. Coming out of surprise, the old man stared at the redhead before sighing. It will be £1 for the commission to be published. Ads by PubFuture. Adrian gave him the money and left, but not before saying goodbye to Marich, nodding his head, but he ignored him again while he continued playing cards with his zombies. Returning to his house, Adrian went back into his room and prepared himself a steak, and while he ate his late lunch, the redhead began to think about the plan to follow. Mr. Eye of Wisdom's next party would be in 2 days, so he still had time. The hunter potion only had less than half left to digest, so by using the club to legally go hunting he could digest it during this week or half of next week. Today was Monday, June 5, 1349. 9 days had passed since he woke up in that cave. There was little more than a month left before Mr. Fool fell from the Saphira Castle. He had to find a way to join the Tarot Club for the formulas, materials, information and money. Adrian was not even going to dare to look for the card of blasphemy that was being guarded by a certain evil spirit. Joining the hunting club got a surprise when he met Mr. Grievous, who was a provoker, so the following formula was assured as long as he was willing to sell it. The fact of meeting Zio was nothing more than her taking him to the party organized by Mr. A. Obviously, Adrian was going to pay her for it, so he didn't have to worry too much about it. With all that planned, Adrian left the house again, and taking a public carriage again, he headed to the forest to hunt. When it was 1800, Adrian managed to reach the forest. He was dressed in a black vest and a simple shirt with his revolver under his left armpit, and he was wearing a belt full of everything he would need for hunting. He had gone shopping for hunting clothes and hunting tools in the 3 days he had searched for the ingredients for the potion. Going deeper into the forest, Adrian wasted no time in beginning to survey his hunting ground. When he was still Joa, he always wanted to be a hunter, and he had read several books regarding hunting, but when he reached the age of 16 years old, his tastes changed and he was studying to become an architect like his grandfather. Leaving the past behind, he could use the knowledge of those books to his advantage now. Ads by PubFuture. A hunter always has to be aware of his surroundings and always has to be careful not to become the prey. Sensing signs of digestion, Adrian knew he had found another of the rules of acting. After learning his hunting ground well, Adrian began to look for signs of animals in his surroundings. It didn't take him long to find poop from what appeared to be a deer. Quickly using the hunter's tracking skills, Adrian managed to find the area where the deer was most active. Pulling out the hunting tools, Adrian quickly set up several traps to catch the deer. Climbing to the top of a nearby tree, Adrian waited for the deer to pass through his traps. And so time passed and 6 hours passed that Adrian waited. When they were about to spend 7 hours, a large deer ran past Adrian's traps, activating them. This caused the animal to be suspended upside down in the air with no chance of escape. Adrian, who had been waiting, quickly jumped out of the tree and plunged his hunting knife into the deer's neck, causing the animal's rapid death. Adrian quickly gutted, skinned, and cut what meat he could take with him. He took down what was left of the deer's body and buried it. A hunter does not waste a prey and takes all he can of it. Another of the rules for acting as a hunter was that a hunter has to be patient and wait for the right moment to strike. Another good part of the potion was digested due to hunting and because he managed to discover all the acting rules of the hunter. 2 more hunts and the potion would be fully digested. With everything packed up, Adrian proceeded to leave the forest at 1 a.m. and headed home. This time he had to walk home because the public carriages were only available until 2200. It took him an hour and a half to get home, and the first thing he did was put away the deer meat and skin and lay it out to work with during the week. Taking a shower, Adrian headed to his bed and quickly fell asleep after a productive day. When morning came, a ray of sun fell directly on Adrian's face through the window, which caused him to wake up. "Fuck you, son," thought the redhead. Being a hunter, his body had become stronger, so despite yesterday's activity, Adrian woke up full of energy, but this didn't mean he didn't like sleeping. Dressing in a white shirt and a gray vest and placing the revolver under his left armpit as always, Adrian headed to the club. After entering and greeting Robert, who was still reading the book, he headed to the second floor. Charles, Isaac, and Victor were playing cards at one of the tables in the back while they drank some wine. When they saw him, they greeted him and invited him to play with them, so Adrian accepted. While they were playing, Adrian took advantage and tried to bring up topics of conversation. "So tell me how things went for you yesterday." "They have gone relatively well. My wife continues to ask for strange foods, but I always try to satisfy her taste. Once a few weeks ago she asked me for ice cream mixed with steak and fruit salad on a plate. It's fascinating how pregnancy affects a woman's brain, causing her to have such curious cravings. This should be studied more," was Charles's response before he began to babble about different studies that could be done related to pregnancy. Seeing that Charles was lost in his own world, Adrian looked at Isaac and Victor, seeing what things they had to tell. "Honestly, my older children could not make me more proud. They are studying at a university in Tingen, and it is almost certain that they will be able to get a well-paying job when they finish their studies, and my daughter is still in school, although she will soon be graduate. She is obsessed with mechanics, and I hope she can develop that talent when she grows up," was Isaac's response before returning his attention to the game. "I don't know how you can deal with such weird women. Women should stay home and take care of the children instead of thinking about things they don't understand." It was a comment from Victor showing that he was undoubtedly a true believer in the Lord of Storms. After many games in which Charles always won, if they had played for money, Charles would have taken every penny, which shows his IQ, a worthy believer in the God of knowledge and wisdom. When 12:50 arrived, Adrian said goodbye to the men who were preparing to leave somewhere. Going down to the firing range, Adrian saw Grievous, who was shooting at the targets quite easily. "It seems that age has not yet fully reached you, Mr. Grievous. Brat, shut up and get ready to practice. Show me if you remember what I taught you yesterday." "With pleasure." After an hour of practice, Grievous made Adrian take a break. "Not bad, Brat. This time you fired 15 shots in a row on target. Now we can try a more distant target." "Thank you for the compliment, Mr. Grievous. It was not a compliment, and now get your butt up and the break is over." This time the target was 25 meters away and Adrian only managed to hit 29 of 40 shots. "I'm done with class. I'll see you tomorrow, and you better do better than today's disaster." Nodding, Adrian left the shooting range, and saying goodbye to Robert, who was still reading the book, he headed to Braveheart's bar. Entering the bar, which was somewhat quiet for 4 p.m., Adrian went and sat at a table prepared in the far right corner of the bar to wait for the sheriff. But as time passed, no one with Zio's characteristics entered the door, but this did not bother Adrian. After all, a hunter had to be patient above all things. 11 p.m. arrived and no one managed to bring Zio, and Adrian left the bar and headed home. Entering the kitchen, he cooks the deer that he hunted yesterday and accompanies it with a glass of water. It must be because he was the one who hunted the deer, but this food tasted especially delicious. After eating everything and washing the silverware, Adrian took a bath and went to sleep. On the morning of Wednesday the 7th, Adrian woke up and, getting ready, returned to the club. Greeting Robert, who was still reading the book that was making Adrian want to read it to see what it was all about. When he went up, he saw that apparently, no one was there. Going down and heading towards Robert, he asked him where they were. "Oh, they must have forgotten to tell you, but they have issues with their jobs, so they won't be able to attend the club for a few days." "And what about Mr. Grievous? Is he available in the morning?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Adrian, but Mr. Grievous is not available today either. He will just be back tomorrow. That old man told me to come, and in the end, it turns out that it is his day off." "Then I'm going out again, Mr. Robert. I'll see you again tomorrow." Nodding to Adrian's words, Robert returned to his reading. Seeing that it was barely 7 a.m. and that he only had to be at the Braveheart's bar at 4 p.m., Adrian quickly went to the bar to let them know that today he would be at the bar at 8 p.m. regarding the commission. After that, Adrian quickly went home and grabbed his hunting gear to go back to the forest. It was 8:30 in the morning when Adrian arrived at the forest. This time Adrian was planning to do one more hunt before going to Mr. Eye of Wisdom's party. So going deeper than last time, Adrian, after spending an hour analyzing the terrain and finding the trail of 2 large animals. After identifying the tracks of one of the animals, an extremely crazy idea came to his head. The first thing he did before starting it up was to see the tools he had with him and see that everything was in order. He also checked his revolver and made sure it was loaded. Quickly following the trail of the animal, Adrian managed to find it. This one was trying to catch fish in a small lake in the woods. This was a large animal covered in black fur and Adrian's current prey. Adrian was planning to hunt a bear. Seeing the size of the bear, Adrian wondered if he had gone completely crazy to do what he was going to do. But realizing his own weakness and how he wanted to be sequence 7 before Mr. Fool brought all kinds of problems to Backlund, he decided that he needed to be faster. So, meditating to calm down quickly, he went into the forest to prepare the welcome for the bear. After an hour, when the bear was frustrated that he couldn't catch any fish, Adrian came out to the plain with a wooden spear that he had sharpened. Seeing this, the bear began to growl as a warning, but this hardly matters to Adrian, who simply stopped about 30 meters away from the bear, causing it to growl more loudly. With his heart beating rapidly and all his senses wide open, Adrian prepared himself for the third most crazy thing he had done since he woke up in this world. He grabbed a good-sized stone from the ground and threw it into the bear's face. This caused the bear to let out a loud roar and chase after Adrian. Seeing this, the redhead smiled and ran into the forest, always making sure the bear followed him. The bear would never know that he had fallen for Adrian's first trap being provocation. After a few seconds of running through the forest with a bear on his heels, Adrian made a great leap to a tree holding on to a branch. Seeing this, the bear tried to ram the trunk, but before reaching it, he tripped over a rope that was stretched out and trapped his legs. Adrian did not miss this and jumped on the bear's back, stabbing him multiple times with his wooden spear. Only because of the strength increased by the hunter's potion was Adrian able to deal damage to the bear with the wooden spear. It didn't take long for the bear to break free and began to jerk Adrian off his back. But Adrian plunged the spear into the bear's back again and used it as a support for the bear's movements. The bear roared in pain, and seeing that the annoying human didn't fall, he decided on another option. Suddenly he began to throw his back against the trees to try to crush the cockroach that was on his back. Adrian ripped the spear from the bear's back and jumped off the bear's back and quickly rolled, not to waste a moment, and started running again in another direction, and the bear, seeing red now, went after the redhead again, only now with more fury and energy than before. Just when he was less than 8 meters from the redhead, he cut a rope that was lying against a tree. This caused a large number of leaves to cover the bear's view, preventing him from seeing the redhead. Adrian did not miss the opportunity and continued to stab the bear with the spear, and always moved without staying in one place. Suddenly, when he stabbed the bear's side again, the spear broke and the bear took the opportunity to charge Adrian, but he dodged it without any problem. Running to the other side, only faster now, Adrian reached a plain and took a great leap that allowed him to cross a great distance. When he touched the ground again, Adrian stopped running and turned to look at the bloody bear that was charging toward him. But he simply stood still, taking off an imaginary hat as he made a bow that he maintained no matter how closer the bear got. When the bear was 3 meters from Adrian, the floor where the bear was collapsed and he fell on it. Dropping the bow, Adrian walked over to the hole and looked down at the bear that was impaled on multiple wooden spikes at the bottom of it. But despite everything, the bear was still alive, but without the possibility of leaving or fighting. Seeing this, Adrian took out his revolver and pointed it at the head of the dying bear. "Thanks for your help." When he said that, Adrian fired 4 quick shots into the bear's front, causing the bear's head to open like a flower, killing it, and freeing it from its suffering. Adrian closed his eyes and felt like a warm summer breath crossed his entire body at the same time that he heard the roar of a panther. The hunter potion had been completely digested. The hunt had been a complete success, and with each trap, the bear had fallen into the potion was digested a bit more, and when the bear fell into the spike trap, the potion had almost been digested. It was when Adrian blinded the bear's life that the potion had been fully digested. Looking at the bear's body in the hole, Adrian sighed and went down to skin it. One of his rules was not to waste the prey and to take what one can of it. At 1 p.m. at Adrian's house, he was admiring his new bearskin rug and couldn't help but pat himself on the back. The carpet gave a nice touch to his house. Looking at the table, one could see the bear's claws and fangs. That was the most he could carry, the rest he buried in the same hole. After putting everything in its place, Adrian took a shower and headed to his room. In the middle of this, Adrian could feel the changes that the digestion of the potion had brought, and they were very significant. His senses sharpened even more and his strength increased again as well. He could tell that the speed and ease with which he could cheat had increased greatly. Sighing, Adrian simply went to the kitchen to make himself lunch while he waited for 5 p.m. He took advantage and opened the newspaper that he had bought to read while he ate. Mysterious murders in East Backlund already count 13 victims, and mysterious disease takes the lives of 4 people. Sighing, Adrian put the newspaper aside, quickly finished his meal and began to set more traps around his house. It seems that the witches had already arrived. When 5 p.m. arrived, Adrian arrived covered in his mask and cloak. Standing in front of the door, Adrian raised his hand and gave 3 long blows with an interval of 2 seconds and 9 short blows with an interval of 5 seconds. The door was opened and Adrian entered and, arriving at the room, sat down at a table on the sides to wait for the party to start. Dash 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 dash. What's up guys, Author here. What do you think of Adrian's hunt against the bear? I tried to show all the advantages and disadvantages that man has when facing beasts bigger than him and how he has to use his mind to win. I hope it was shown in the fight and that you liked it. And it looks like trouble has come to Adrian's doorstep. What do you think will happen? Wait for the next chapters and maybe you will find out. And as always, remember to leave a comment that motivates me to continue writing this story. There are still 4 chapters left, so I'll see you in a while. After a while and seeing that no more participants arrived, Mr. Eye of Wisdom got up from his seat. Seeing that our friends couldn't make it, we can't wait any longer so the party can start. As soon as he finished saying that, the woman from the last time quickly got up from her seat. As the gentleman with the briber formula here I am, did you bring the money? Seeing this, the woman visibly relaxed and quickly said yes. Would you like Mr. Eye of Wisdom to verify the formula? Yes please. Seeing this, Mr. Eye of Wisdom couldn't help but sigh inwardly. The party is just starting and I already have to verify something. Adrian wrote the formula on a note by folding it and placing it on a worker's tray. The worker went to Mr. Eye of Wisdom and placed him next to him. He took the same ring out of the silver container again and placed it on her left hand, then placed it on top of the note. Valid. As soon as he said that, he took off and put the ring back in the container. The worker quickly took the tray and brought it to the woman's side. Seeing this, the woman quickly took out the 800 pounds and placed it on the tray and took the note with Briber's formula, and opened it to read it. Potion Formula Sequence 7, Briber. Main Ingredients. *1 Weeping Infant Flower. Strange-Faced Cannabis Crystal. Supplementary Ingredients. *5 drops of Golden Jimsonweed Juice. *5 drops of Black Jimsonweed Juice. *4 drops of Fantasy Grass Essential Oil. *80 milliliters of red wine. When the woman read the formula could barely contain herself from humming with happiness. Storing the formula in her coat, the woman stood up again. I am selling 2 extraordinary objects. The first one is a revolver. Its abilities are that while you carry it, you will be able to move in the shadows without being detected and you will make your steps extremely light. If a shot from this revolver hits a target, it will attract all the hatred of people within a radius of 10 meters. The negative effects are that the wielder will also be affected by the radius, and as long as one has the weapon on his body, the wielder will release an instigating aura that will make people around them more aggressive. The sealing method is to keep it in a silver container filled with cow's milk. The second one is a glove, and their abilities are, the user can transform a paper figure into themselves and swap places with the figure. It can not only block a fatal blow but also weaken the damage from hexes, and the second ability is Flame Jump. The user could phase through a fire spark that they had left behind and any flame that existed within 5 meters. The negatives are that the wearer will always be looking for praise from an audience, and if they don't get it in a long period of time, the wearer will lose control. Also, if it is worn for more than 20 minutes, the user will have a hard time taking it off, and if you wear it for more than 30 minutes, the only way to remove it is to break the bones of the hand. This will make the glove come off on its own. The sealing method is that every 3 hours you have to clap and praise the glove saying, "What a wonderful show," for 10 minutes. This will make the glove go into a state of joy and sleep. The revolver costs 1,000 pounds and the glove costs 2,000 pounds. Is anyone interested? As soon as she said that, the people who could afford to buy such an object began bidding like crazy, trying to get the glove. 2,100 for the glove. 2,150 pounds. 2,200. In the end, the glove went to a masked man for 3,400 pounds and the revolver went to a woman for 1,700 pounds. As the price of the glove went up, it was not a surprise to anyone due to the abilities of the glove. Even the negative effects were quite controllable. Even Adrian wanted to buy it but he was too poor. After that, a man got up and requested the purchase of Sheriff's formula but no one had it. Seeing this, Adrian thought about whether to tell him that in order to find that formula he would have to go with Mi9 but he decided to keep it to himself. He didn't gain anything by telling him and most likely he wouldn't listen to him. After an hour of trading that was not as intense as that of the gloves and the revolver, Mr. Eye of Wisdom rang the bell and marked the end of the meeting. The first to leave was the woman who sold the extraordinary items. The second was the one who bought the glove. The third was the one that bought the revolver. Then it was more random until it was Adrian's turn and he was able to leave the party at 7:30 p.m. As he made his way to Braveheart's bar, Adrian weighed up his achievements. He managed to get the 800 pounds, and now he had the money to buy the formula from Mr. Grievous. You'd think why didn't he try to buy the formula at Mr. A's party, and all Adrian would say is fuck him. There are a lot of witches around that party and Adrian didn't want to have the slightest contact with the party. He would only go there to get the main provoker ingredients and he would never go there again unless he absolutely had to. Thinking about that, he finally reached the Braveheart's bar and entered and caught a glimpse of the corner where a petite blonde woman was sitting waiting, accompanied by a skinny man who, thanks to the senses brought on by the potion, could smell the alcohol emanating from his body. Seems like the day is only getting better. With a smile, he sat down facing the two people. Nice to meet you both. Let me introduce myself. I'm Adrian. Dash 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 dash. Hello guys, author here. A quick note. What do you think of the extraordinary objects I just created? Do you think the negative effects are fair? Tell me what you think. Now there are only 3 more chapters left, see you in a minute. Seeing the red-haired man in front of her, Zio couldn't help but straighten her back even more to appear taller. My informant told me that you were looking for me, so I came to see the reason for it. Despite her size, Miss Zio seriously has a majestic and dignified aura, without a doubt a worthy member of Mr. Fool's Club. Before answering Zio, Adrian turned to look at the man to the side. You have completed my commission and as promised, here is your pay. Giving the 30 pounds to the man, he said goodbye to Zio and went to the bar to buy something to drink. Being just the two of them now, Adrian could talk more calmly. I hope you can forgive the inconvenience I caused you so that you can meet with me, but I believe that we can benefit from each other. I can't see what you have to offer that can benefit me, Mr. Adrian. That's because I haven't shown what I can offer yet, Miss Zio. In fact, this deal can bring you great benefits. Tell me, Miss Zio, do you know anything about people with abilities beyond understandable? This made Zio visibly tense, and seeing this, Adrian decided to keep pulling. I am one of those extraordinary people and I am looking to attend an extraordinary party, and I have a suspicion that you, Miss Zio, can help me with that. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Mr. Adrian. Please, Miss Zio, you do little to hide the fact that you are also an extraordinary one. When Adrian said this, he saw how Zio took out a triangle sword from his waist. Please, Miss Zio, I'm not looking for trouble, the only thing I want is to make a deal with you. My patience is running out, Mr. Adrian, and you better speak fast. In exchange for you taking me to an extraordinary party, I can offer you several things: money, ancient history, information about the ravings during the full moon, and information about Beyonders. When he said all that, Adrian saw that he had captured all of Zio's attention. What kind of information do you have about the ravings during the full moon? Bingo, was what Adrian thought and quickly responded. I have a fair amount on it, but sadly I don't think I have it all. Are you still interested in this information? Very interested. Tell me what you know. Perfect, then pay attention because I will only say this once. Some special Beyonders will hear during the full moon a raving that will make them lose control little by little until they can't take it anymore and they lose control, becoming monsters or dying instantly. When Adrian said this, he saw how Zio turned pale and she put her sword away and came closer to whisper to him. Do you have any more information on this? Yes, I have it, but I'll only give it to you after you take me to the extraordinary party. This caused Zio to stay quiet and think about what to do, and Adrian had no problem waiting. After a few minutes, Zio finally spoke. If you're willing to wait until Friday next week, I can take you to the party. Is that a good deal? Sounds pretty good to me, Miss Zio, but how can I get in touch with you to find out where to meet? I will come to pick you up here on Friday of next week at 2 p.m. You have to bring something to cover your body and a mask. I think it's perfect, Miss Zio. It's a pleasure doing business with you. Zio didn't care much for what Adrian said as she quickly got on a public carriage and speedily headed home. By forcefully entering her house, this caused a woman who was sleeping on the sofa with a notebook on her chest to suddenly wake up, sending her little book flying. Zio didn't care much about that and stood in front of her best friend. What happened, Zio? If it's because of the book, I promise I'm working on it. I just need some inspiration. The woman tried to excuse herself. She has slightly curly brown hair and pale blue eyes. But Zio didn't give a shit about the book at this moment. When were you going to tell me? The fury that dripped from that voice made the blue-eyed woman scared. Zio, I don't know what you're talking about. Why don't you calm down and we'll have some tea while we chat? While saying this, the girl tried to touch her friend's hand, but Zio pushed her away and then grabbed her shoulders while she had tears in her eyes. When you were going to tell me that those ravings were killing you, did you want me to find you turned into a monster or a mass of meat on the floor? As she said this, Zio began to squeeze her friend's shoulders hard, causing her to let out a groan of pain. Calm down, Zio. I already told you that those are not a problem for me. I can tolerate them. The girl tried to save the situation, but Zio had already completely lost patience. Do not lie to me, Furs. Tell me the truth. Furs just lowered her head and said nothing. No, please tell me it's not true, said Zio while shaking Furs. But she was silent and tears began to fall from her eyes, falling on the floor. Oh, Evernight. Zio cried harder while hugging Furs, who kept looking at the floor. How did you find out about this? I made sure you couldn't notice anything, was what Furs murmured in a low voice while being hugged by Zio. This caused Zio to react and remember where she heard the information from, and a small light of hope lit up in her heart. Separating from Furs, Zio brought her hands to her face to lift her up so that she would look into her eyes. Furs's face was a mess with tears streaming from his bloodshot eyes. A man told me about the ravings of the full moon, and he told me that if I took him to Mr. A's party he would give me more information. Maybe he has a way to solve this. This caused Furs to widen his eyes in shock, and as he grabbed Zio's hands she began to cry harder as she tried to open her mouth to speak. So I have hope. Only that man knows, so please, Furs, don't hide things like this from me again, I ask you. While saying this, Zio hugged Furs again, who returned the hug weakly. I promise, she mutters slightly. While all this was going on, Adrian was trying to cook an old recipe without knowing that what he had told Zio would have such results. This is my first time write something sad, Sue. The reason for writing this scene with Zio and Furs is largely because I'm tired of always reading in other stories how Zio is kept in the dark without knowing that her best friend was dying next to her room. Zio deserves to know what was happening to her best friend, so I decided to make it so she knows. On the morning of Thursday, June 8th, Adrian woke up again, and getting ready he went to Braveheart's bar to spend the morning until 1 o'clock p.m. After spending his morning watching the drunks, Adrian left the bar and went to the Hunters Club. Arriving at the club, as always he saw Robert reading Stormwind Mountain Villa. Already ignoring that, Adrian went to the basement and could see how Mr. Grievous was smoking a cigarette while reading the newspaper. In the headline he could read the following. Another 5 people die from strange murders. The authorities say they have everything under control. With a heavy heart and knowing that time was running out, Adrian headed towards Mr. Grievous. Look who came, I was thinking. Before he could continue with his classic insult, Adrian interrupted him. Mr. Grievous, how much do you want for the provoker formula? This caused Mr. Grievous to sigh in defeat and place the newspaper next to him. I was thinking you'd never ask me, Brad. After that move you made when we first met, one would think you were already won. I'm sorry about that, Mr. Grievous, but please tell me the price of the formula. £550 and it's yours, Brat. That's a lot. My limit is £420. Well, what a shame. The most I can lower it is £480. £430, £460, and that's the limit. Deal. Adrian quickly took out the money and handed it over. Grievous tore off a part of the newspaper and wrote the formula on it. Then he handed it over to Adrian and continued to smoke with his cigar. Adrian then read the formula. Potion formula sequence 8, provoker. Main ingredients: a horned toad's tongue, the lungs of a provocative rooster. Complementary ingredients: asterisk 80 milliliters of pure water, asterisk 5 drops of liquor, asterisk 7 grams of powdered iron, asterisk 12 feathers of the provocative rooster, asterisk 6 drops of horned toad venom. After reading the formula, Adrian kept it in his vest before turning to look at Grievous. Do you want to keep practicing shooting, or are you going to try and find the ingredients? I'll continue practicing if you don't mind. Taking a deep drag on the cigarette, Grievous rose from his chair. Then show me if you improved, and you better hit the target 32 times. Nodding, Adrian familiarly took out his revolver and aimed at the target. After 2 hours of class, Adrian was very proud of himself. After digesting the potion, he could now hit the 25-meter target 34 out of 40 times. Grievous had him increase the distance to 40 meters, and he managed to make 27 of 40 shots, which is pretty decent if you ask him. Leaving the shooting range and saying goodbye to Robert Adrian, he bought a newspaper before heading to Braveheart's bar. He was reading the whole trip looking for a new party. It had barely been a day since the last one, but it never hurt to check. But there was nothing, just information about the murders. Arriving at Braveheart's bar, Adrian went to the old man. Marich was with him while he continued to play cards with his zombies. Now what do you want, brat? I need your advice to get a job as a mercenary, and I was hoping you could help me. Raising an eyebrow, the old man replied calmly. Brat, this is the best place you can get for this kind of thing. Let me explain how you can start from the bottom. First, start taking jobs that are done in groups and build your reputation on that, and over time you can take on more important assignments. Then, do you have an order of that kind available, Mr. Old Man? When he asked this, the old man smiled and took a sheet from behind the bar and handed it to him. It said, request for cargo protection. 8 people with diverse abilities are required. Reward £50. Reading the order, Adrian looked at the old man again. What about the other 7 people? They are already ready, they only needed 1. Well, I accept this assignment when we have to go protect the cargo. Within 2 days, Saturday night will be protection. Other details of the order will be discussed with your boss when you are there. So I'll run into my comrades there. Yes, all 7 of them, so wait until Saturday and get ready in these 2 days. If that's all, get out. Bowing, Adrian said goodbye to the old man and turned to nod to Marich, but he ignored him again. Already accustomed to that, Adrian left and headed home. Arriving home, Adrian checked that none of the traps he left had been activated, and seeing that everything was in order, he went inside his bedroom and he closed the curtains. After that, he sat in a lotus pose to meditate. He was finally going to revisit the City of Calamities. Although the only way to enter that he knew was this, and because he did not dare to try to guess the prayer to enter, so he quickly began to outline the sphere of light continuously until it was again replaced by the city surrounded by yellowish smoke and soldiers of fire. When he entered again, he reappeared in the same place as last time, and the fire soldiers saw him again, and they made the same military salute and continued with their patrol, allowing Adrian to pass. Still curious about these fire soldiers, Adrian began to walk around the city that was so similar to his birth city but had very different details. Whether it was the distribution of the buildings, the streets, or the shops, everything was very different. It only had the aura of home, but it was not. It was somewhat difficult to explain, but a good example would be that it only had the front part of the city, the rest was very different, and it felt strange. The greatest example of that, a huge Roman Colosseum in the center of the city was surrounded by fire, not allowing him to pass.